So I was actually born in North Idaho, but when I was 2, my parents moved us to Indonesia because they were missionaries.
Wow.
My dad did some crazy stuff. Going over, 20 miles of open ocean in a freaking dugout canoe with a half-naked tribal guy. And there's fucking snakes and everything out in the jungle's trying to kill you. And the people you're trying to make contact with think you're an evil spirit. And they'd establish contact with those people. And then they'd set up shop in their village for years and learn their language, learn their customs, their culture.
Yeah, that's wild.
And then they would translate the fucking Bible into that language. Just crazy shit. I mean, I know people probably think my parents were irresponsible exposing us to the stuff that we did as little kids. I mean, I had a machete when I was 8 years old. I got a machete and a Bible for my 8th birthday.
Were there instances where shit got kind of hairy?
Oh yeah, because they had never seen a big, tall, white person before.
What was the light switch for you? What made you say, I want to join the Marines and this is my next step?
I joined because I wanted to go to combat. When I went over there, we used all armored BMWs and Mercedes. We'd staged armored vehicles in alleyways and stuff. We never had them sitting all out front. I think we got in more gunfights than any other security detail. It was every single day. It's actually on YouTube. There's a dash cam from our cars during that ambush. As soon as we turned down that road, out of the corner of my eye, I see guys running with PKMs and RPGs and AKs. And I'm like, oh shit, here we go. It's an RPG.
There's that motherfucker, RPG, I saw that cocksucker.
We lived through it, but we were freaking pissed. Next time they fuck with us, they're gonna learn who they're fucking with.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. I spent 8 years as a Force Recon Marine, was in the invasion of Iraq. Spent the next 8 years working for various U.S. government organizations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Israel, and even Palestine. He's the author of The Perfect Fucking Life and Finally Somehow Home, 2 books that we'll talk about towards the end of the episode. And he's also the stunt double for Peter in Office Space, specifically in the copy machine bashing scene where he got his hands dirty on behalf of that movie. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Jason Lee Morrison.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate you taking the time out. Where are you coming from?
I actually live in Eastern Oregon right now,
Oh,
right
okay.
on the Idaho border.
Oh, nice.
So I was born in Idaho, so I'm almost back to home, but not quite.
Yeah,
right on
that's
the other
cool.
side.
Probably a different, bit of a different pace there than here, I imagine.
Oh yeah, very much.
Yeah. What's the last full book that you've read?
Last full book that I read, man. Honestly, I've been so buried in writing that I haven't read a book in a hot minute, which is weird because I'm a writer.
Yeah.
But actually, I found that when I quit deploying, I had a really hard time reading, which used to be my favorite thing to do. I'd read 3 or 4 books at a time, and especially on deployment, you're just going through them. But since I quit deploying, I think hypervigilance or something, I don't know, I just have a really difficult time sitting down and applying that kind of focus to reading something.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is I've been in kind of output mode to where more of creating and a lot, like I said, a lot of writing and more of a creative mode since I quit deploying than I have been in intake mode.
Yeah.
But I love all the historical fiction books, and I really love the classics, like written around the turn of the century, like Scarlet Pimpernel and Horatio Hornblower series, and all these old books that I grew up with because my dad was an avid historian and a reader, and we didn't have a TV because I grew up in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And so he would read to us every night for like an hour or so. But he didn't read kids stuff. He read like the good shit. So anyway, cool. I'm sorry. I actually honestly can't remember. Probably Hell, I honestly can't answer that question right now.
Well, that's a good segue into the next one. Maybe other than reading more, what's something you wish you were better at?
I wish I was better at writing. I mean, I think that's a really good question. But writing for me is something that I found in my life to like really give me purpose.
Yeah.
And I think you can always be better at communicating with people directly, and I mean to where you can relate to them in such a way that they can pick up exactly like the emotion that you're trying to convey, not just the story, but being able to kind of relate the feeling of. And the first thing I wrote when I decided I wanted to become a writer was a short piece. It's the first part in the Perfect Fucking Life, and it's called "What War Feels Like," because when you can convey that you get to actually convey part of the experience to someone instead of just saying, "Hey, this is what happened."
Yeah, I think that's the really the trick or the key to good writing is that, and I think that's what gets, especially for people who don't read a lot or don't enjoy reading as much. That's the difference between finishing a book and not is that ability to be a good storyteller. And I would say it's really no different even in the podcast medium. The guests or the episodes that do really well, almost irrespective of experience, within reason, are people who are really good at storytelling and can tell a story and make the person feel like they're there with them sharing that experience. So I hear you there 100%. If time travel were possible, where and when would you go?
I would be a P-51 fighter pilot in World War II, probably.
No shit. Pacific or Atlantic?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Both my grandpas were in the Pacific, and I grew up reading a lot about. My whole family's been Navy. I was the first Marine to.
Yeah.
And so my uncle, he was a submariner. He said the only good Marine's a submarine. So I really like the Pacific theater, but I don't know. There's a lot more going on in the European theater.
Yeah.
For that kind of stuff.
Yeah. It seems like it's focused on a lot more historically, which obviously there were far more countries involved, whereas, the Pacific was pretty much just Japan and the Allied forces, whereas, the Axis powers were all over, Europe, and it was a lot more about front lines and things like that, where it was more of an island campaign in the Pacific. But it's certainly all fascinating stuff, and it's a pretty, I wouldn't say a common answer, but it's certainly one, because that's one question I like to ask everybody, and I've had a number of combat vets all, seem to want to go back to World War II and fight, which is pretty neat. Hey guys, I want to take a minute to tell you about the Mic Drop Patreon, where you can get the real mic drop experience the way it's meant to be seen. You get completely uncensored, unfiltered, and uncut episodes with nothing held back, just raw, real conversations directly from me to you, without YouTube censorship. Plus, you'll see it days before anyone else, with early premieres and exclusive bonus content that you won't find anywhere else. You get behind-the-scenes access to the show, including pre- and post-show footage, with me and the guest both in studio and on location, depending on what the guest is into and what we have going on. On top of that, we've got tons of Patreon-only perks, mic drop swag, access to exclusive merch, and the chance to submit your questions to be asked at the end of every episode. You'll also get a sneak peek at our upcoming guests, so you'll know who's in the studio weeks before anyone else. We're constantly releasing new features and dropping new content based on what you want to see. For our top-tier members, you get the same mic drop challenge coin that all of my guests receive from the upcoming show, which will never, ever be for sale. We've got quarterly merch that's sent out directly to you, a monthly Zoom call with me where we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, and an active group chat where we all shoot the shit on a daily basis. All of that for just a few bucks a month to support the show. Right now, we're also offering a 10% discount off an annual subscription, which means that you get more than a free month. I want to say thank you to everyone who has already signed up. Your support means that we get to keep bringing you the content that you love. So if you haven't yet, hit the link in the description or go to patreon.com/micdrop and join the team. I'll see you guys in there. Thank you. When hunting isn't about hunting at all. Team Dog features comprehensive and customizable meal plans with dry and raw food options to meet your dog's unique nutritional needs, including digestive sensitivities, allergies, or selective eating. Did you know combining 75% dry food with 25% raw food delivers robust, nutrient-dense meals for your dog? Be your dog's hero with Team Dog. Do you have a favorite quote?
You put me on the spot here, man. There's so many. Probably the man in the arena quote by Roosevelt.
Yeah, it's another classic one that I think for guys from our line of work applies and is pretty popular.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tired of hearing people talk shit from the sidelines.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, living in Eastern Oregon, I imagine you have an EDC. Do you? And if so, what do you carry?
I carry a Shadow Systems.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just started very nascent stages. Started a company called Spadil, and the Spadil is the Ace of Spades card. So the idea is it's the highest card in the deck. Like shooting is a martial art. It's not but it's seldom taught as a martial art. It's usually taught like in a class. I took a class. But, like say Mike Tyson didn't take a boxing class. Like he dedicated himself to the art of it. And so you don't see, tier 1 guys carrying swords around. You see them, they're carrying guns. So the idea is that's the training in the ultimate form, in the ultimate martial art. So anyway, and all that to say, I got some firearms companies that sponsored me getting started with that. One of them was Shadow Systems, and I've been very impressed.
Yeah.
They're
my buddy Clint, who was actually just here on Friday, is part of that company because they're here in Dallas. They're all made right here, and it was a really cool opportunity. Myself, my buddy Matt, and Clint this has been a couple of years now, but did their build class where you build I don't remember what model it was. But you build it basically from scratch and then get to keep it, which is pretty
wow,
neat. Yeah, it's really cool.
Awesome.
So you get a full tour of their production facility, and then you go in this like conference room, and one of their main dudes like has these tubs of parts, and then you build the whole thing together, and then you get to keep it. So it's pretty awesome.
That is cool. Wow.
Do you have a morning routine? Like what time do you get up, and what do the first 3 hours look like?
Well, I usually get up around 5. I just can't help it. 5:30, and just get. My wife is a dental assistant, so she works at that job, and someone has to get the kid ready and everything for school. So that's my morning routine: is getting up and getting her off to work, and then getting Riker, my son, ready to go to school, and taking him and dropping him off at school, and doing that whole thing. It's actually it's really it really helps me appreciate the whole women doing that for their kids and stuff as raising kids in that kind of stay-at-home dad thing, which I never thought I would be. But as a writer, I have to work from home, and all the other stuff all the other irons in the fire I have going on. So I've taken on that role in the last few years, and it's been neat because I have I don't know, it's a different kind of dynamic.
Yeah,
it builds between me and my son.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. There's been periods where I would say got the opportunity to take the kids to school, and then I would go out to the kennel facility, and for those periods of time, it was pretty neat to be a part of that morning routine that way. So I hear you there 100%. So you're originally from the Eastern Oregon, Idaho border region, right?
Well, man, my childhood's gnarly and crazy. So I was actually born in North Idaho, up in Kellogg. Beautiful country up there, near Coeur d'Alene. I don't know if you've been up
Oh,
there.
yeah.
But when I was 2, my parents moved us to Indonesia because they were missionaries.
Oh, wow.
So that's where I grew up, man.
Like your whole childhood? Or?
Yeah.
Wow.
We'd come back to the States. I think we came back to the States 3 times during the course of 16 years, just for 6 months at a pop.
Yeah.
But otherwise, yeah, I spent my whole time there. And they were like different. At one point, they were like working in close proximity with these tribes that lived out in the jungle and stuff. So it was a really, I mean, I was a little kid, so I didn't know anything different. You know, that was my childhood. My first home was a little cottage on the beach, right on the beach, hearing the breakers every night.
Wow.
Slam into the shore, and in Indonesia with water so clear, like if you looked out of your canoe, it seemed like you'd fall.
Wow.
It was amazing.
Yeah, that's super
Sea
cool.
down like 20, 30 feet, just crystal clear water, and
Yeah.
dolphins and shit jumping around, and the tribesmen going out in their canoes and fishing every morning.
Damn, that's wild.
It was
Did you have siblings?
yeah, I have an older brother and a younger brother.
Oh, wow. So with that, I mean, I know that's all you have to compare it to in terms of growing up, but seeing how American kids grow up now, especially being a dad, what are some of the biggest contrasts that you found kind of looking back on that compared to how it is here?
Well, it's funny because I spent 16 years in Indonesia watching the missionaries do their thing, you know, day in and day out. And I spent 16 years as a special operations guy in one form or another. And it occurred to me, I was like, which one of those jobs required more courage?
Yeah.
Because my dad did some crazy stuff that I wouldn't have done in the military, like going over, 20 miles of open ocean in a freaking dugout canoe with half of a coconut shell to bail with in a storm, I mean, just crazy shit that no air support, no radio, you got a fucking tribal person in your boat, who owns the thing and knows how to get around the islands and stuff. Or and one example I put in my book was, I don't know any special ops guys that would go being 200 miles deep in the jungle, going upriver at night through rapids and shit with a 15 horsepower beat up motor and a shitty boat and just some half naked tribal guy up in the front of the boat with a shitty flashlight showing you where the rocks and shit are, and there's fucking snakes and everything out in the jungle is trying to kill you, and and the people you're trying to make contact with think you're an evil spirit, and I mean, just insane. There's one great example I have is two buddies. They're still missionaries over in Indonesia, and one of the guys was a heavier set dude, and the other one was kind of a wiry 5'9" kind of guy, that kind of like your quintessential kind of special ops, kind of build. And these guys were out doing survey work in Irian, and they came up to this cliff face, and they didn't have a rope, and there was no way around. They had to go up this cliff face. So they had two choices. Either because the heavier set guy was like, I'm not going to be able to make it up there, man. So they thought about it, and they were like, okay, well, I guess one of us could just, the heavier guy could turn around and go home, and then would just leave Kevin, the other guy, to keep going on the mission, because they were doing survey work. What they do is they fly around over the jungle and look for smoke in the jungle, and that's when there's smoke, there's people. So, and then they got to hike in and survey and see what tribes are there, whatever. So, anyway, what they ended up doing was Kevin, the lighter guy, Ray stood on his shoulders and climbed up with his hands, while Kevin climbed up below him.
Jesus.
And they climbed up the fucking cliff like that. I mean,
Do you know how tall the cliff was?
that was like 120 feet,
Good God.
over 100 feet. I mean, and if they fell, they were done.
Yeah.
So seeing that kind of, I like to say that I grew up in a culture of courage.
Yeah.
And the contrast is amazing. I'd say it's a wash. It's about even. I mean, that's between being a special ops guy and being a fucking missionary.
Yeah.
It was, and I didn't, it would surprise me when I thought of that, but it's true, man. So I think the main thing that, I mean, I know people probably think my parents were irresponsible exposing us to the stuff that we did as little kids. I mean, I had a machete when I was 8 years old. I got a machete and a Bible for my 8th birthday. And I used to kill snakes and shit with that thing. And I mean, I remember being chased around by a fucking cobra. I drove over his tail on my bicycle and he started fucking chasing me. So, I mean, I think the biggest contrast, and it's sad because Americans are so hung up on security and safety that they seldom get to see the beauty of freedom and courage, you know. And I wish there was more. We used to be. Americans are notorious for courageous things, especially and we still have that attitude, I think. But I wish more kids were a little more exposed to danger, frankly, because then you learn to manage it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it is the how far we've come as far as kind of baking in that safety component being such a necessity and trying to mitigate risk at all costs or at every turn. I agree. I think it robs kids in terms of their childhood and learning how to navigate the world. It really robs them of that because, like the world's an evil place, and if you don't understand that, number one, and number two, figure out how to deal with it and navigate it, then you're really setting your kids up for failure.
Yeah, they're gonna face it one day. They might as well face it when they're still at home, and you can kind of guide them through it.
Yeah, where there's still some railings to hold on to a little bit, you know. And it is pretty sad to see, the hand sanitizer, type of mentality with everything, and like play dates and like. There's a happy medium. Obviously, you don't want your kids just running amok doing absolutely anything they want and having no guardrails. But at the same time, that helicopter mentality, I think, really just puts them on their back foot for adulthood. But
yeah, I think so.
Were you able to get any of the kind of normal American experience as far as playing sports with your brothers or any of that kind of stuff, or was it very almost tribal the way that you grew up?
Yeah, we had, so when I got a little older, we, actually when I was 6 years old, I went off to the boarding school. And that was a significant, experience for me, especially at that age. I can't imagine sending my kid, who's 7, off to a boarding school, now, but it was just kind of the way that we did it. And at those schools, especially in the high school where later on there were certain sports. We had basketball and we played soccer a lot with the locals and a lot of in volleyball. We didn't have like football or anything like that, but we did play a lot of sports and stuff. I think there were about 32 American, New Zealand and Australian kids at the boarding school. It was all expats. So yeah, we had some kind of semblance to that. And then when I came back to the States, I played football, which I was a freshman and I was like 5 feet tall and 100 pounds. I was a tiny kid.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, isn't that? Yeah, it was weird, man. And getting bullied and shit all the time. And but it was it was mind blowing experience coming back to the States from there. But it made me appreciate this country so much. Like,
I'll bet.
I remember listening to the Voice of America radio and thinking, man, that guy talking right now, he's in America. Like, he's in the United States. It's so fucking cool. It was just, and I remember looking out the plane window and just for hours flying back, just looking for the first glimpse of the California coastline and just see the country where, so it really developed a deep sense of love for this country and a great appreciation for it, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Culture-wise, like what would you eat growing up there? I mean, were there any staples that that your parents or that the other missionaries would kind of import and bring in and live off of, or was it all
It's all local, man. Like,
like
I remember one Christmas we got a box of Fruit Loops because it just didn't have that shit there, man.
Yeah.
So it was all. I mean, it was really healthy though because it's all farm grown by the Indonesians. The beef was a little more gristly than the stuff you get here, but it was organic and no chemicals and nothing like that. A lot of rice.
Yeah.
And Indonesian food is really unique. It's very spicy, a lot of spices, a lot of hot peppers and stuff like that in it, and fish, any kind of meat. In fact, a lot of like Indonesian meals, you'd have like 4 or 5 different meats in one meal. You get fish, beef, chicken, goat. I've had dog before. Snake.
Do you remember what it was like?
It was a little gristly and chewy and kind of not too gamey, and they cooked it up with some real heavy spices and stuff the way they did it.
Yeah, that's wild. Did you guys celebrate traditional American holidays in that environment?
Yeah, but it was like the first place we lived in the island of Sulawesi. Some of the tribes there, it was taboo to have a tree in a house. And one of the missionary families actually did that one Christmas. They put a tree inside their home, and someone in the village died a week or two later, and they blamed it on that. So what we did was my dad built like a plywood fireplace and painted it up like it had bricks and stuff, and so that was how we celebrated Christmas.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, you just kind of had to modify things a little bit. But it's as I got older and we moved actually to the island of Borneo. It was neat because the locals, and it was all Muslim in the cities, out in the interior, it was all animistic stuff. They believed in spirits and rocks and mountains and stuff like that. But in the city where I ended up, in the city of Pontianak, or near the city of Pontianak, it was very heavily Muslim. But we had such good relationship with the locals that they would come over on Christmas, and it was a big thing to visit someone's home. So the whole freaking village would come over at different times for on Christmas Day and a couple days thereafter, and sit down and have cookies and visit with. And we do the same thing with them on the close of Ramadan, because then after Ramadan they could all eat, so they had like big feasts and stuff. So we'd go to all their homes in the same manner. So
that's really cool.
It was, and it'd be cool as hell if that kind of tradition existed a little more in the West, because really just sitting down with someone in their living room, it's a pretty significant kind of bonding, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Did your parents and or you pick up any of the local language, or did you just stick with straight English?
Oh, no, yeah. The tribal missionaries, they'd learn Indonesian, and then they'd get an interpreter or whatever to take them into a tribe and establish someone who spoke the tribal language or something close to a trade language. They'd establish contact with those people, and then they'd set up shop in their village for years and learn their language, learn their customs and their culture. And then all these languages, none of them were written languages, they're all just spoken languages. So they would actually transcribe, they learn the tribal language and they'd transcribe it into written language. And then they would teach the people how to read their own language.
Yeah, that's wild.
And then they would translate the fucking Bible into that language, or at least big parts of it. So, you're talking, this is a 20-year thing. It wasn't just like, oh, let's go build these guys a playground. And they're like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, it's a very heavily, I didn't learn any tribal languages. I spoke Indonesian because when I was about probably 12 or, I was younger than that. Probably 7, we moved from Sulawesi to the island of Borneo, in Pontianak that I mentioned before. And my parents were actually the dorm parents for the school. So after that time, I wasn't directly in the tribes, but all the kids that would go to the boarding school, they lived in the tribe, and and so we'd fly out to their tribes and hang out with them and stuff like that, run around the jungle.
Yeah. When the internet goes dark, radio still works. Your smartphone relies on the grid, but when the power goes out or the internet crashes, both are useless. Crane's CC Skywave SSB2 helps give you access to critical communications your phone can't. That includes emergency single-side band transmissions used in disasters, both natural and man-made, so you are never left in the dark. Crane was kind enough to send me my own SSB2 to try out, and it's been rock solid. It's got crystal clear reception, it's compact form factor to fit in any go bag, clock, alarm, headphone jack, a 60-day satisfaction guarantee, and it's an American-based company to boot. When normal communication fails, radio is your survival. The SSB2 is built for that moment. Compact, powerful, crystal clear, pulls in signals most radios can't even touch. Whether it's AM, FM, weather alerts, worldwide ham operators, you can stay informed because in a crisis, knowledge is power. This isn't just a radio, it's your lifeline, and Crane has the performance that matters. To order the SSB2, call Crane's U.S. base customer service at 1-800-522-8863 or visit ccrane.com/drop. That's Crane, CCRANE.com/drop, and use the code DROP, all caps, all one word, at checkout for 10% off orders over $75. Hey guys, sleep is one of the cornerstones to health, to recovery, to productivity. For a number of years, I've struggled with getting a good night's sleep and being able to wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day, especially when I have a busy recording schedule, got all the dog stuff, the Warrior Dog Foundation, rolling, training, etc. The day-to-day for me, just like with a lot of people, really takes it out of you and requires that you get a good night's sleep to be able to tackle that next day. Helix Sleep was kind enough to send me a Helix Dusk Elite king-size mattress, and I got to tell you, it's been an absolute game changer for me for being able to fall asleep fast, stay asleep, and wake up feeling ready to take on the next day. I will say, going back from the mattress I was on before to the Helix is night and day. The ability to stay cool, they have cooling technology. It's basically waterproof or water-resistant, stain-resistant. And I will say the level of firmness is that perfect mix of not too hard, not too soft, and gives me the ability to get a really, really good night's sleep. Go to helixsleep.com/mic drop for 20% off the entire site. That's helixsleep.com/mic drop for 20% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/mic drop. One thing that we conservatives believe in this self-reliance, taking responsibility for your own health, your family, and your future. But when my sleep was off, it felt like I couldn't show up as my best self. I spent night after night tossing and turning, waking up exhausted and feeling like I was falling behind on everything that mattered. That's why I am so excited to share something that's made a real difference in my life, and that's Beam's Dream Powder. Beam is proudly founded in America and run by people who share our values: hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a science-backed, healthy nighttime blend packed with ingredients shown to improve sleep so you can wake up refreshed and ready to take on the day. Dream is made with a powerful blend of all-natural ingredients: reishi, magnesium, L-theanine, apigenin, and melatonin. It's designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling amazing. And unlike other sleep aids, there's no next-day grogginess, just great, restful sleep. Plus, Dream tastes incredible. It's become part of my nightly routine. My focus, energy, all came back, and I finally felt like I could tackle life head-on instead of just trying to get through it. And I'm not the only one. Beam has already improved over 17.5 million nights of sleep, helping people across the country wake up and feel their best. So here's the deal. Beam is giving my listeners the ultimate Patriot discount of 40% off. Try their best-selling Dream Powder and get up to 40% off for a limited time. Go to shopbeam.com/mic drop and use the code mic drop at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/mic drop and use the code mic drop for up to 40% off. Support an American company, invest in yourself, and start getting your best night's sleep tonight. Guys, as you know, I work with a number of different products. One that's easily the most near and dear to my heart from a cause standpoint and a personal relation standpoint is Bubs Naturals. The hat on the coffee table sitting right in front of me belonged to Glenn Doherty. It was a John Deere hat that I gave him. He had it when he tragically passed in Benghazi. And I was fortunate enough to get it back from one of the co-owners of Bubs. He sent it back to me to be able to keep. Bubs Naturals is a tribute to Glenn. He was one of everybody's, he was kind of that guy that was everybody's best friend. I met several people that considered him his best friend, and he was a guy that was impossible not to like, and just, caused happy waves that rippled through every community he was ever a part of. His nickname was Bub, and that's where Bubs Naturals comes from. But it's a lifestyle brand. It's inspired by Glenn. They give a ton to charity. They've donated over $200,000 to charitable causes since their inception in 2018. On Veterans Day, 100% of the proceeds go to the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation, which does phenomenal work helping active duty and children of lost active duty members go to college or scholarships that they've donated a ton, and they also are heavy into the recreation space of helping people do that, because that's what Bub was all about. They have collagen peptides, which I put into my morning routine every single morning, as well as the functional creamer / MCT oil that goes into it as well. They have hydrate or electrolyte drink mixes, which are great for pre-workout, during workout, and post-workout to get all the added sodium, potassium, magnesium, etc. that's required when you deplete it. And they now have Bubs Brew, which is a specialty organic coffee that is also very, very good. It's USDA organic, fair trade. It's Whole30 approved, which is the first time that's happened. It's free of yeast, mold, and aflatoxins. Small lot roasted, guaranteed fresh, and it tastes great. Biggest thing is Bubs is a family company. The way that they started is, again, super close to my heart, with him being one of my closest friends for a long time. And I just can't say enough good things about that company, of the product that they put out, why they started, what they give back to veteran communities and the Glenn Doherty Memorial Foundation. And I encourage you to go to bubs.com, and now there's a landing page specifically for Mic Drop listeners. Just enter the code Mike, M-I-K-E, all caps, and you get 20% off your first purchase at bubsnaturals.com. So that's www.bubsnaturals.com/Mike. And you can check out the Mic Drop landing page and go support an amazing cause. And what a cool childhood. Are the different tribes and villages, is their language based off of Indonesian, or is it completely different?
It's completely different.
Oh.
Yeah. So
I mean, I can imagine I guess, picture the challenge with that, of trying to, even just communicate, let alone, do the missionary type of work of spreading, Christianity and all that. I am curious, with them being very tribal and very territorial and, culturally completely different than even Indonesians, were there instances where shit got kind of hairy?
Oh, yeah.
And were your parents or any of the other missionaries there, were they getting attacked, or how did that shake out?
It never happened in Indonesia that I know of, although I know there were some really close calls a lot, especially in the early stages of making contact with these tribes, because they had never seen a big, tall, white person before. To them, they actually thought that the missionaries were evil spirits. Yeah. And my dad was telling me one time they went into a tribe, and I was too young to go on these trips with them. But him and his two coworkers went into a tribe, and all the women and children ran into the village and ran into the jungle out of the village and just stayed there the whole time they were in the village. And so, to kind of show the tribal people, hey, we have some similarities here. The next trip in, they brought my older brother and my mom and one or two of the other wives, and think one or two kids with them, just to show them like we have families and everything too.
Yeah.
And which is crazy because just expose, I think my dad was like 20. He was probably 27 or so. My mom was 26 or so like that. But this American lady hiking through the jungle. She's tough as nails, but she's the sweetest lady you'd ever meet in your life.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was crazy. But like I said, I took it for granted because that's what I knew, and I really did. I a lot of times wished when I was there, wished I was here in the States, because, especially up in Idaho, you have guns and dirt bikes and play sports and all that
cereal
stuff.
And cartoons and shit.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. I'm curious, like, what's the initial approach? Did it vary from tribe to tribe? Or, because, like, what's the first thing that a missionary is going to communicate to a tribe of why you're there and why they should let you stay and not attack you? Like, how do you even start that conversation?
Well, there's ways to do it right and ways to do it wrong. The most, probably the easiest way to do it is to come in and say, hey, like, we can give you medicine, we can help you with, or even like giving them stuff. The missionaries found out you never want to just give anything to a tribal person because then it becomes a welfare kind of relationship. You always, like, if they wanted like a T-shirt or something, you'd say, okay, I'll trade you this for something, even if it's like a button or something, because you never want to develop that paternal kind of attitude with. And some missionaries have in the past, I don't think it happened in Indonesia, but we'd hear, about other stuff, and missionaries in Venezuela, or Brazil, or Paraguay, or Iran. Some mistakes were made in that, where when the missionary left, finally after 25 years, whatever, retired, went back to the States, the whole village just kind of fell apart because they were depending on this, missionary to provide everything. And by then, you build an airstrip outside the tribe and everything, so which was great because you could fly. You had medevacs and stuff like that. We had a Cessna 185 in Borneo and a little Super Cub in Sulawesi that they used to, do resupplies. But if someone got hacked up by or bitten by a snake or something and they needed to go to the hospital, missionary could get the plane in there and fly them out to, to treat them. And just stuff like aspirin, they don't have shit like that,
I imagine the life flight, though, would almost scare them. Like, what are these fucking aliens? They're flying around. Like, what the fuck is this thing? A plane? It's going to, take us up into the sky and we disappear? Like, is that how they respond to it? Or?
Well, you kind of have to, you gradually expose them to things like that. And I know a lot of people out there would say, well, that's kind of disrupting their culture. And it kind of is, but you try living out in the fucking jungle with, like, nothing.
Yeah. Absolutely
nothing. And everything in the jungle is trying to kill you. And it's, camping's great for a few days or a week or whatever if you got, but literally these guys had they only had weapons and stuff that at first that they could build out of like bamboo and stuff. They used bamboo for pig traps and stuff. You'd sharpen it up, but then they got exposed to metals and they could make some amazing machetes and spears, and they made pretty awesome blowguns too. Yeah. And they were deadly accurate with those things.
Yeah, it reminds me, we were in the Philippines for about 6 weeks, 2 months, somewhere in there, and doing a bunch of cross training with the Filipino SEALs, and we did a 1 week jungle survival, jungle survival training, and so we're rocking hammocks and poncho liners, A-framed over the hammock and hanging your ruck on whatever tree it's connected to, throwing a mosquito net up and whatever, and hanging your boots in the tree, and carrying around rice and then killing shit and eating it and making bamboo shoot stew with eel or frog meat or something in it. And it was really cool for a week. But kind of the same thing though. Like as we're wrapping the training up, it's like, all right, we're going back to the barracks. What are you guys doing? It's like, oh, this is how we live most of the time, and it's like they're making, they're taking bamboo shoots and like I don't even know what, I mean, it's a natural plant-made twine material that they just carved out of a tree and wrapping bamboo spikes on it and using that to spear eels and shit and making soup and, cooking rice out of big chambered bamboo shoots and, over a fire. And it's just like, holy shit, these guys are resourceful. I mean, I remember one time we did a shooting range and we had those really heavy-duty plastic silhouette targets. So we, ran the range, did that, whatever, and then we started cleaning up. And they're like, no, we'll clean everything up. We got it, Very next morning, we're doing over the beach, going in and out of the surf zone training, and like a bunch of them had taken these silhouettes and cut them in the shape of fins, took the fucking riggers tape that we had that were taping the targets, to the structure to post it up. And so they took riggers tape and rolled it over on itself, like cord basically, and then wrapped that on their feet like a Tiva sandal, and they made fins out of our garbage.
Wow, yeah.
Overnight, and for them that they felt like they hit the fucking lottery, and it was just like, holy shit, I appreciate being a fucking American citizen. Like shit that we wouldn't even think twice about just throwing away or burning, they're making operational equipment out of. And there was a bunch of other examples of them doing stuff like that. But it was like some months or some periods of the year they wouldn't get paid for 3 or 4 months, wouldn't have a place to live. The barracks would be, not serviceable or not livable or, whatever. And the amount of respect I immediately gained for those guys. And operationally, they were pretty savvy too, but just living arrangement-wise, like, man, those guys had it fucking rough. But
I worked with the Thai recon guys.
Never bitched about it.
Yep.
I mean, always smiling, good attitude. We're bitching about our plane being late, or whatever, and it's just like, man, these guys are on a whole nother level of resourceful. It reminded me, not to make a negative connotation, but of like the ingenuity you see in prisons. It's like the shit that people can make when they have nothing and all they have is time, and like the things that human beings can figure out in those kind of dire circumstances is remarkable. But is it a gut feel, or is there a point where you say, okay, we've got this good relationship? Have you ever heard of Jesus? Like, when do you bring that up? and how does that go?
Well, a lot of, as I said before, there's certain ways to do things right and ways to do them wrong. And, some have made the mistake of saying, hey, basically the idea was when you'd see a tribe prospering, the other tribes would be like, what do they got that we don't have? And a lot of times they would accept, once they learned about, okay, this is what the missionaries are doing, they talk to, see it in other tribal groups. And then they just want the missionaries to come in, so we call them rice Christians. Oh yeah, we'll believe whatever if it makes us prosper. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you really had to be careful about it. What I learned actually a lot about communication in that, because what the missionaries would do is they wouldn't just come in and just start shoving the Bible down people's throats. For one, you couldn't do that anyway because they didn't have any reference to it. It was completely, they didn't have their own language, let alone anything to teach. The missionaries didn't have anything to teach them from. So they would learn about the tribal culture, or as much as they could about their religion, their beliefs and all this stuff. And then they would just ask questions about it. And they would ask questions that would put little questions in the minds of the tribal people. Like, hey, yeah, maybe this doesn't make sense, what we believe, that the rocks, or, whatever it was, that you have to cut the grains of rice from directly behind it, or the evil spirits will get mad. And so you're walking around, no shit, that was one of the taboos. Like, if you didn't do that, the evil, you'd piss off the spirits or whatever. So just asking questions of them so that the questions were in their mind, and it would put little cracks in their belief system. And then the trial people would say, okay, well, what do you think about it? And so it was more along the lines of kind of letting them come to the conclusion on their own that maybe there is something more to, this world spiritually that I haven't taken into account. And so what do you guys think? What do you believe about it? And then you still aren't shoving Jesus down anyone's throat. Then what they do is, as they would translate, as they would teach, they just taught the Bible in a chronological order. So you didn't even get to Jesus for sometimes a year or two of teaching.
Yeah.
You're just talking about, this is how this book says that the world came to be. And, the interesting thing was, in every single tribe in the world that I've heard of, there was a flood. All these tribal groups that all believed that there was a flood in some part of their history, lore that they've been telling around the campfire the whole time. And there are a lot of commonalities in the story that comes from this 3,500-year-old manuscript that we call the Holy Bible now. And that's what it is, a 3,500-year-old manuscript. People look at it as I'm not going to read that as religious. Well, if you were Indiana Jones and you dug the damn thing up, would you just throw, it's fucking religious?
Yeah.
No, it's something to it.
Yeah.
Something about it. I'm not saying, I'm not proselytizing or anything, but there's something to that book. And so anyway, they would go through the beginnings of that book, and a lot of other, like I said, a lot of the beliefs that the tribe people had as far as their own history kind of aligned with that in kind of a strange kind of way. Of course, they had their own ideas about creation and all that, but or whatever, wherever this world came to be and their culture did. But it was so to answer your question, is a very gradual kind of making them want to know. And so you weren't force feeding anyone anything that they didn't that they weren't asking to hear about.
Yeah.
And then over the course of teaching, you kind of built this narrative and this understanding in their minds, like, there is this problem in the world with a brokenness that we can't quite explain, like what's going on there. And this book, it talks about that. And then you get, here, what's the resolution of that? What does this God that you're teaching us about, what does he do about it? And then, so you basically, you're teaching it historically, really.
Yeah.
You don't probably, in some tribes, the missionaries were there long enough, 20, 25 years, where you could translate pretty much the whole Bible. But usually it was key parts of it that would show that narrative. And you had to be clear in it, because, when you're translating something, especially into a language and a culture that you know nothing about, you can make some really big mistakes.
Yeah, and I imagine some things don't directly translate,
Yep.
so you're dealing with that on top of it. Fast forward to now, do you still consider yourself a man of faith, and that's a big part of your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I see faith as it's kind of like infinity, the concept of infinity. We know it's a thing because mathematics points right to it. But a human mind can't really wrap their mind around what infinity really is. But it's there. So I think faith is the belief in things that you find to be true. It's taking the true stuff and saying, okay, all this truth points to something. Where is it pointing to? Because if there is a God that is greater than all this universe, well, you're probably not going to be able to comprehend him.
Yeah.
Because I can't even comprehend all of me.
Yeah.
So, but I can't wrap my mind around that, but I can see the things of truth in this life that point to something. What is it pointing to?
Right.
What throws people off there is that when they adopt lies instead of truths. And this goes for anything, not just religious, not just faith stuff, but anything. If you're holding on to a lie, and it's obfuscating the truth, you're going to be off. Your azimuth is going to be off. So, and I challenge myself to do this. Like, where's the spot the lie? What is it that I believe, whether it's about God or anything, whether it's about an operation or whether it's about a fucking, a mission. What, just double check, make sure that I'm not putting my faith in something that's not true, because that's going to bite me in the ass down the road. So double checking the things that I believe and saying, does this actually make sense?
Yeah.
And actually that scares the hell out of a lot of people, even like religious people or, Christians or whatever. Because a lot of people, I think, don't really believe in their God. They believe in their religion.
Right. I mean, kind of like with politics, there's some parallels there, I think, too. But and I also, hearing you talk about the process within missionaries and how they approach it, it actually sounds very similar also to the SF methodology.
Exactly, man.
It really does.
When I started working, like, Force Recon doesn't have the same mission as SF, but after I got out, quit operating, I was doing a lot of work with USOCOM and stuff like that, and USASOC and those boys, and I was like, how do I know all this stuff? Like, how do I know this tradecraft? I was like,
why does this seem
it's the
so
same
familiar?
damn thing.
Yeah,
it's the same thing, but it's hard as hell for the SF guys. They have a really tough mission of being able to, like, convince someone of a certain, hey, maybe we should do this because it's, it's going to be beneficial or whatever the case. But changing someone's perspective politically or whatever, trying to get them to fight against someone that, a shared enemy or whatever, that's difficult to do. Changing someone's ideology, that's the hardest thing there is to do, I think.
For sure it is. To me, you see those same parallels with political arguments, like trying to, if a hard line left or right is trying to convince the other side of their perspective on it, it's almost impossible.
Absolutely, because and what we end up doing politically is just screaming at each other and trying to figure out who can, trying to scream louder, and it doesn't do shit.
Yeah.
You got to stand next to someone and walk through life with them, And here's the thing that I think both sides need to take into account. Really the best way to convince someone of something is to put yourself in their shoes, understand their operational context, if you're talking operationally. Understand, and I had to do this growing up because I wasn't really an American kid and I wasn't really an Indonesian kid. I was right in the middle.
Yeah.
So when I was talking to Americans, when I come back here, I'm like, okay, I have to figure out, how do they perceive me? What do they think I'm trying to communicate? And what's their context? Where are they living? What are they, what about them can I relate to formulate what I'm saying in such a way that it'll be received, whether as an Indonesian or an American. And that's, once you put yourself in someone's shoes and you stand next to them and you actually take into account their perspective on life and say, okay, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to take what you're saying and I'm going to really think about it and see if it's true. And if it's true, I'm willing to give up what I believe. It's scary to do this. I'm willing to give up what I believe to be true and replace it with what I've just found to be true.
Yeah.
When and in many cases, you're going to stand there next to someone and you're going to go through, this and realize it's not true.
Yeah.
What you're believing isn't true. But then you're standing next to them and you can show them, and this is why I don't believe what you believe, brother, because I'm looking at it from your perspective, and these things aren't adding up. If you want to convince someone of something, that's the best way to do it. Yeah. But you have to be vulnerable in order to do that. And I think if we approach political argument a little more along the lines of empathetically understanding the context of someone else, standing in their shoes, and then just maybe showing them, maybe it'll show you that, maybe I need to change the way I perceive this. But if not, if not, I have a hell of a lot better position to be able to help them see the truth than I do just screaming at them.
Yeah. Well, and you run into that politically all the time. There's a really cool exercise, which I've mentioned on this show a few different times in different episodes, but Jordan Peterson does this exercise with married couples where if they get into an argument, a heated one, where they're both, kind of digging their heels in, is he has them flip sides. He says, okay, you're gonna argue her perspective, and now she's gonna argue yours to kind of highlight that, put yourself in their shoes, and now try to make that argument, which I think is a really good way to figure that out, and it's a great exercise. I am curious, I assume probably not while you're a child seeing this, but as you look back on it as an adult, and I think it's also important to try to remove the religious or the faith component, which, maybe that's the whole thing in terms of not doing that, and that's why this doesn't apply. But is there a part of you that looks back on it and views it to a certain extent a little bit like manipulation?
It definitely is. I mean, it's manipulation. Like if you see a child doing something that's going to hurt them, and you want to change what they believe about what they're doing to be a respect, like to understand what the danger is or whatever. I mean, yeah, you're manipulating them to see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
So, and there are definitely manipulation that word comes with a lot of baggage, but I see what you're saying. And with regard to the missionaries, if there was ever the thing that kept that clean as it could be, is that they weren't doing things for anything that would benefit themselves.
Right.
Manipulation is usually the outcome of that is to benefit the person trying to manipulate.
Yeah.
The benefit was for the people that they were communicating with. But I totally get that. I mean,
well, no, I don't, and I guess similarly, like I don't even mean that necessarily negatively. I'm sure it sounds that way, or it could come across that way, but I will say, like, dog training is the exact same thing. Now, granted, there is a mutual there's a mutual benefit for both the dog and the trainer, in that you're communicating clearly, and the dog is doing the things that you need them to do in a lot of cases, especially when you're not talking just basic obedience. Even with that, it's a safety issue. It's not destroying your house, not making the human go crazy to coexist, but you're manipulating the environment. You're manipulating the dog's mind and doing certain things to make it really easy for that dog to make the decision you want him to make, and then you're rewarding him for it. And you just do that over and over and over until you get all these conditioned responses, and the dog does exactly what you want without forcing him to do it. Yes, there is compulsion-based training that's built entirely on force and compulsion, but I think especially nowadays, most good trainers understand that while there is a component of compulsion and consequences and punishment that plays a role in dog training, it's a very small part of it, and most of it, 85-90% of it, is using reinforcement and manipulating the environment to make it easy for the dog to make the decision you want him to. But was there a catalyst for your parents deciding to bring you back to the United States, or was it just our time is up and now we're moving back, or what was kind of the big reason for it?
Well, I graduated high school, and right at that time when I graduated high school, they closed that missionary school and they moved it to another island, to some Java, I think. And so it was my dad was the director of that school, but it was kind of my older brother had already gone back to the States, and my little brother was about to graduate high school, and it just kind of worked out to where, to them, it seemed like the next chapter was, right there. So they traveled back I traveled back with them, and then that's kind of how it wrapped for them. But a lot of it just depends on the person, as far as some missionaries are still, they don't retire over there, but they're working over there until they're in some capacity until they're, into their later years.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of support functions you can do as well, like translation, linguistics and stuff, for instance. And some missionaries, they started building a church in a tribe or whatever, and then now they go to different tribes and kind of act as a consultant kind of thing, or like I said, doing the language translation checks and stuff like that. So
Right.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah. When you first moved back here, I know you'd spent some time in the United States, but was there a kind of a singular biggest culture shock of things to get used to once you moved back here permanently?
Oh man, I remember trying to figure out how to pump gas. And I'm 18 years old, and I got my first job at this detailing cars at this car dealership. And they give me this gas card, and they're like, go over to that gas station, fill this thing up. I'm looking at this credit card, and I'm like, what the fuck is this thing? Yeah. I mean, I knew what it was, but in trying to figure out how to do it, and it took me like half an hour to fill the car up there. What the hell were you doing? Where were you at? Yeah. So it was just so many small things, but I kind of knew that I didn't know.
Yeah.
So I kind of knew I was a bit naive in many respects. So I think understanding that about myself helped me transition to where if you think you got all your shit together,
yeah,
and you're going to set yourself up for failure if you don't understand that about yourself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So there's just a lot of little different.
Was there a favorite meal coming back where you just couldn't get enough of something, McDonald's, or I mean?
Oh yeah, McDonald's was awesome. Because we didn't have anything like that over there. So going to McDonald's you nailed it. That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Well, I mean, even not growing up in Indonesia, that was the first thing I wanted after boot camp, which was only 8 or 9 weeks. But I remember my parents came for graduation, and they're like, what do you want to eat? And I was like, drive through fucking McDonald's right now.
Yep.
I want a double cheeseburger meal, fucking big fry, and it's weird how those things work. But what was the light switch for you as now an 18-year-old back in the United States, growing up in Indonesia? But you say, what made you say I want to join the Marines, and this is my next step?
Well, a lot of that came from, like I said earlier, my dad was reading all these war books to us, basically. I mean, really classic ones too. So I developed this love for reading and for history and for military history, because that was obviously the most exciting to me. And it actually started when I was in Indonesia. I found this old beat up, like 1979 Naval Academy catalog in the library there. And I started flipping through it, and I was like, man, this would be cool. And right about that time, and I always wanted to be a pilot too, because the missionary pilots were awesome, watching them fly around. Some of the best pilots in the world, man. Crazy stuff. But then Top Gun came out, and so I watched that after they edited all the swear words out. It was hilarious. But man, that really just bit into me.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So then I got a hold of this Naval Academy book. I was like, you know what? It seemed like a bridge too far at the time, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to go to the Naval Academy.
Yeah.
I was like in 10th grade or something. I started getting good grades. I started studying, started PTing and applying myself, and and writing letters to congressmen and stuff like that. And sure enough, when I was finally in my senior year, I got congressional nominations to all the service academies.
Wow.
And I picked the Navy, and because like I said, my family was all Navy, and I wanted to be a naval aviator. But then I got all the way up to sending the packet in to the Naval Academy, but the medical portion was incomplete because the hospital that I went to there didn't have some of the machinery or equipment to do the full thing. I don't know if it was the EKG or something stupid like that. It was missing. So I had an incomplete medical packet, and I didn't even think to just write my congressman and say, hey, look, they don't even have that shit here. Can I just, and I'm sure it would have worked out and I would have gotten an appointment. But because of that, I did not get an appointment. And I was devastated, dude. I was like ruined because I'd spent the last 2 years. And what really got me is I knew everyone was like, you're going to do what? Because all these missionaries are like, oh, I'm going to go be a missionary when I grow up, most of them. And which is fine. It was just great. But, yeah, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. So they were all like kind of hinting at me for varying degrees, saying that, that's not going to happen, or kind of looking at me with ire. Like I remember I talked to one of the missionary pilots who I really respected, and I thought he would be all about it. And he's like, why do you want to do that? Don't you want to serve God? And like, what the hell, dude? Can't get a break around here. So to me, I was like, all these people think I'm not going to make it. I'm going to prove them all wrong. And they were all right at the end of it. Oh, it just got me, dude. Like, God damn it. So I was planning on going to the Naval Academy right out of high school, and it fell through right the last semester of high school. So we went back to the States. I didn't know what to do with myself, so I just went to, my older brother was at the Bible school that the missionaries all went to go through that whole pipeline, which he's still a missionary now. But so I was like, all right, I guess I'll just go there. I wasn't a very good student. I almost got booted out of there, but I made it through one semester. I just wasn't, I was restless and, irritated at the whole thing that had happened. And then the Naval Academy wrote me another letter while I was at the school. It was like, hey, you should apply again because you were a promising candidate. I was like, oh, awesome. So I got another congressional nomination. Everything went through the whole deal again. And then I went to the hospital to get my medical portion done again. And the hospital never sent the packet in.
Wow.
So again, twice in a row. And so I'm like, you know what? Fuck it, dude. Yeah. I'm joining the Marines.
Yeah.
Because I figured I can go into the Marines because I really wanted to experience the ground combat too.
And what year is this?
This was 95.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I was like, I can go into the Marine Corps and be a grunt in the Marine Corps and experience that, and then I could be a Mustang, go to the Naval Academy and fly jets. But then I was at School of Infantry, and I'm sitting there. So I went in. So I dropped out of Bible school end of 95, February 96, joined the Marines.
Yeah.
And I got sucked into the whole recon thing. Yeah. Never ended up flying.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, it was crazy how I ended up there.
Yeah. What expectation versus reality showing up to Marine boot camp and then subsequently through infantry and ultimately recon? Was it everything you thought it would be, or were there things that really surprised you about any of it?
I had when I got back to the States, I binge watched tons of movies because I didn't have access to them there. So one of the movies I watched was Full Metal Jacket. So
yeah.
I was like, that's
Private
actually
fucking pile.
I mean, it almost like scared me, but it enamored me with the Marine Corps because I was still at that time thinking about going to the Army, maybe flying Apaches or something like that because that'd be a good job too. But that's what made me finally be like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do what's the hardest branch, the Marine Corps? Well, that's where I'm going because I wanted to see.
Yeah.
I think we all have that.
Oh yeah. Test yourself.
Yeah. But I think the biggest thing was I expected Full Metal Jacket, and of course in mid 90s boot camp's still hard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a mind fuck. But I expected it to be harder. And then I got into School of Infantry and I'm like, this could be harder. I mean, this should be a little more difficult. Yeah. And I'm not saying it was a breeze to go through boot camp. I was challenged very much. And the Marine Corps has a really good program of making men into Marines that as a conventional force, I really don't think there's an equal on the planet to the Marine Corps. And I think a lot of that has to do with as much stupidity that goes on in the Marine Corps because there is a lot of bullshit. But overall, they have a really good program that makes good fighters.
I imagine that growing up in Indonesia probably skews your perspective of hard compared to all of the rest of the kids that grew up in
That's a lot
suburban
of
America, you know. So
Yeah.
All right, so I guess fast forward through kind of the training component, or I guess taking one step back, did you go through infantry and do any deployments as a regular infantry guy and then go to recon, or how did that whole shake out?
So recon now is like a pipeline thing.
Yeah.
You can get like a recon contract and stuff, but then you didn't. You had to go into the grunts, and but I got lucky because the recon guys showed up at School of Infantry (SOI) and did a recon selection for SOI guys. I guess that wasn't a normal. They didn't always do that back then, but anyway, fortunately they came in for my class, but I still wanted to be a pilot. So, there's these big jacked motherfucking dudes are standing down with dual cool, dive bubble and jump wings. They're standing there. I'm like, oh, damn, that's fucking cool. They give their snake eater pitch, and 200 kids lined up to sign it. I think it was like in the third week or something like that at School of Infantry, and the school was 2 months long. So anyway, they like 200 people signed up for it, and then they screened all the SRBs and everything, and medical, or all the records, and only I think 12 of us were invited. Well, so I'm sitting there while all these people are standing lined up to sign up, and I'm like, I'm not doing that shit. I'm flying jets. So, because I had obviously plans to go to the Naval Academy, but it got down to the last guy. There was one guy left. I'd just been sitting there for like an hour and a half while these dudes are signing up. I was like, damn it. All right, fine. I'll just put my name down, It'll be something. So I went down there and signed up, and yeah, there was like 200 names on this paper, and mine was the last one. And so we did the recon indoc there, and a few weeks later, the 12 of us that actually passed all the requirements and everything, GT score and medical and all that. And I was one of the 3 that passed the indoc. And then after School of Infantry, I got orders straight to the unit, the 1st Recon Company in Camp Pendleton. And it was weird the way they did it back then. It wasn't, you went to the unit first, which you were fucking meat, dude. Like, you're not a recon guy and you're in a recon unit and you're a freaking boot.
Yeah.
PFC or Lance Corporal, So it was just constant hazing and fuckery and training. But they taught you shit the whole time, It wasn't just fucking with you for no reason. They, knot tying and patrolling stuff, reporting. I mean, everything that you would learn at this basic recon course later, the guys in the platoons were teaching us because they were looking at us like, I'm not going to war with this dude.
Right.
So they had skin in the game. So yeah, we were just getting trained by the guys that we would maybe deploy with. So the whole company would look and watch as, oh, that's a new guy over there. He just got in last week. And we all wore ropes around we were called ropers. You had a 12-foot sling rope tied around your neck and tied in the back with a sheet bend. And that's so you stood out like dog balls, and so anyone that wanted to, it didn't matter what rank they were, they could just fucking thrash you. But and some guys were sadistic about it, and some guys were more, paternalistic about it, would teach you a little bit more, and others, some guys would just murder you, and that's about it. Wake you up in the middle of the night with a fire hose in your room, and there's no rules, and they're drunk as fuck. It didn't matter, So, and I was waiting for my RIP class to stand up, the Recon Indoctrination Program. We stole that acronym probably from the Rangers, but anyway, so we were waiting for enough new guys to stand up a RIP class, which was the precursor to, if you passed the Recon Indoctrination Program, then you could go, you might have a shot at going to basic recon course and getting the actual MOS. So RIP was fucking brutal. But that's where all the weeding out took place, because like I said, the cadre was were operators. They weren't cadre to school. They were just out of a platoon, just off deployment, and they were getting ready to stand up their own platoons. And so they're looking at all the new guys, being like, who do we want? Who's paying attention? Who's worthwhile here and investing in? And then they would invest in you. And if, but the attrition rate was just insane. I think we had just in that class was, I think it started with 25 guys, and we ended up getting. It was 6 or something that got out of it. So, and that was just the prerequisite to go to basic recon course. But that was all doing amphibious stuff, confirmatory beach reports, swimming through the surf zone in the middle of the night, friggin', paddle drills with Zodiacs, and introduction to patrolling. And so you were introduced to all this stuff that you were going to get taught on and tested on in the schoolhouse. But, like I said, the unit was investing in you.
Yeah.
So, and very much the same token, if they didn't like you, you had no chance in hell, because those were the guys that had the final say whether or not you were going to be get the chance to be a recon Marine or not. So, anyway, it was and then I did a pre-scuba before that. So that's 2 weeks of introduction to drown proofing and getting punched in the solar plexus on the bottom of the pool and all that stuff, and problem solving, tanks. We didn't have regulators. We just had the tanks and the weight belt and fins and mask and snorkel. I don't know how it is, but it's probably similar. But anyway, you're swimming around the deep end of the pool, and then you got your dive buddy with your snorkel on. You breathe through your snorkel, head and eyes down, and then hand comes over the top of the snorkel right as you exhale.
Yeah.
Wham! Right in the solar plexus, and boom, down you both go, spin you around. That whole thing. Take all your gear off, steal your tanks if they could, which that was a big, you get in a lot of trouble if that happened. But so you're holding on to your tanks and you're holding on to your dive buddy. And then you had to police up all your shit on the bottom of the pool, put your fins and everything back on, and, after the hit, and then go back up, hand over your head, of course, and but then you couldn't break the surface with your face. You had to keep your shit together, and clear your snorkel and your mask, and just keep on going. So, I mean, you're familiar with all that, underwater crossovers, that whole thing. But so I did that. That was pre-scuba was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I did 2 of them. I did one right before RIP, because they had a company pre-scuba for guys getting ready to go to dive school, and then my RIP class stood up, and then they did another pre-scuba right after RIP class for all the ropers. So yeah, I did two of them, which freaking that sucked ass. But anyway, after that, then I got orders to basic recon course, and basic recon. It was hard, but by that time, you're just kind of used to it being hard. It was 2 or 3 months, I think. Anyway, so I did that, and then I was a MOS carrying Recon Marine, just baby beginning of the pipeline. It went, and again, it wasn't really a pipeline. It was all merit based. So, you had to have your shit together to be selected to go to dive school, and then you had to have your shit together to get picked for an airborne quota, and then same thing, you competing for all the quotas. Yeah. Because we didn't get shit. The Marines in the 90s, pretty low on funding. So, it was very ad hoc. It was, and I've heard some criticism of that, but I think the process of having active platoons involved in training new guys, I think it yielded some really good guys. They don't do it that way anymore. Now you get orders to straight out of, I'm not sure if it's straight out of boot camp or straight out of SY, but you go recon pipeline, and then you got all your schools lined up, which is a lot more economic. It just makes more sense.
Yeah, I think pretty much all special operations at this point have mirrored the AFSOC original pipeline. They were kind of the first ones to do it. I remember even in '97 going through jump school, seeing PJs at at Benning and talking to them about how they did it, and it was like, fuck, why don't we do it that way?
Yeah.
And now I think pretty much everybody is. But
When did you go through? I went through in 97 too.
it would have been like March. Yeah, March of 97.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I went through with a guy named Jason Bowles.
Yeah, I know him.
Did he go to Buds with you? Or what? He was
I don't-
probably pretty close.
Maybe. I don't remember. I mean,
Because it was close, because it was right in the first part of 97. Actually, with me, it was a little later on in the year. For some reason, Jason had gotten held back because the rest of his buddies from Buds had
I
gone
think he
through
was.
earlier.
He may have been in the class after mine. Fuck, I don't remember. The name rings a bell for sure. But yeah, you know, it's good that I think Special Operations has kind of gone that route. But from the time that you got into the recon unit and you were a full badge, you know, recon guy, until you did the Iraq invasion, did you do any deployments that stand out as being exceptional, or that you did any cool shit, or was it just pretty much training until then?
We did. We were on the MEU workups. I know some of you guys, your platoons would go on those MEU deployments too. So, but that was back then. There was out of 175,000 Marines, there were probably only 300 active recon Marines. The whole fucking Marine Corps. So I mean, there were more billets than that, but some guys were training or COD, you know, doing this or that. But actually, guys in platoons, there were probably only 300 to 400. I mean, so. And Recon was a company back then. Now it's a battalion. You had Recon Company and then you had Force Recon Company back then. Recon Company, the difference there is, well, for one, Force is usually more senior guys that have already done their time in the company, and then they graduate and go to Force, which has, the way it was set up is Scout Snipers and Recon had from 1 to 72 hours in front of the forward line of troops, the FLOT, right? So as the troops are moving up the battle space, they would put recon teams, Recon Company, we call them Division Recon, up to 3 days out in front. And then then they would shape the battle space as the FLOT approached them, and then they would go back and prep for another mission, go out another 3 days in advance, whatever. Force Recon is from 72 hours indefinite deep. So you're doing deep reconnaissance, and you need the Halo mission then for that, and the shooting mission's part of that too. Maritime Special Purpose Force, so you take, doing all the raids and direct action stuff. Yeah. So Recon Company that I was, now it's a battalion, but the Division Recon, that's the difference in the two. It's a strategic, Force Recon is a strategic asset for the Marine Expeditionary Force, which is why it's Force Recon. Yeah. And Division Recon's usually for the infantry battalions supporting the grunt battalions. Yeah. So.
Did you go to Afghanistan before Iraq, or was Iraq?
No, I didn't. We were all chomping at the bit to go. I did I did one. Well, when I was at Pendleton, I did a Westpac float over to the Gulf and float around the Gulf, and just Saddam was being a goofball back then, and Operation Southern Watch or whatever it was called. We didn't really do much though. So yeah, it was an interesting experience, but I didn't actually do any like real world ops or anything like that.
So fast forward to the invasion. You're in a group that goes in and does the whole thing. Can you walk us through that?
So when I was after I was at Pendleton, I went to Okinawa for 3 years, and that's where I got into doing the Force mission. I got trained up in that. So and did 2 platoons of that. And then I went to 2nd Force Recon, which was on the East Coast, Camp Lejeune. And that's who I went to war with, the OIF-1. But man, my OIF-1 was, it's actually the reason I got out of the Marine Corps, because there was so much, I don't want to throw dirt on anyone, but some of the like 05, 06 level guys that we had then, I mean, no one had been at war in a long time. We didn't know how to do it, really. And I actually saw this with Hezbollah and Israel when I was there in Israel later. Hezbollah whooped the shit out of the Israelis for the first little while, and then they got their shit together and started being more cohesive in their units and learning all the little nuance of war that takes a while to build. Well, There's actually a problem, and I don't know if it still exists in the Marine Corps, but most officers aren't trained on deployment of recon assets. So there isn't, as far as I know, there's no, like in infantry officers course. I think I'm saying that wrong. It's IOC anyway. To my knowledge, anyway, I don't know. I've never been to that school, but there's very little in the way of educating the officer corps and how to utilize special operations assets in the Marine Corps. And that's, to me, that's probably the weakest link in that whole thing, because it's roll the dice. You might get a commander that loves using his recon guys and his snipers, and you might get a guy that doesn't know how to use them and thinks they're all a bunch of cowboys and never uses them. So what happened with us in OIF 1, we got attached to First Force Recon because IMF, First Marine Expeditionary Force, always runs the show in any war, in any, at least historically anyway. So all of our assets were kind of got raped by the First Force Recon CO. He's like, oh yeah, we got all these platoons now and they got all this gear, and so no shit, like they took a bunch of vehicles and stuff from our mobility platoon and gave them to one of their platoons, and they fucked them all up and left them out in the desert. They were good guys, don't get me wrong. First Force is great dudes. The leadership was just kind of incompetent during that time. But so First Force guys, they got their hands dirty. They did a lot of cool shit over there. But and the Second Force guys with Task Force Tower, they detached and they went and did a bunch of shit. They were in Nazaria and did a lot of shit. But I was in one of the platoons that got stuck with First Force, and they basically just took all of our gear and gave it to their platoons, and we got some fucking, missions monitoring the freaking Iranian border, and it's fucking pretty actually. So and there was shit going on all around me. Like I remember standing on the hood of my gun truck looking over the berm in Al Qut and watching Cobras do rocket and missile runs on a line of armored personnel carriers trying to retake the airfield. I mean, it was very conventional war, of course, back then. So, and I'm watching this happen all around me, and I'm like a tourist, and it drove me freaking nuts. Because, a lot of people wanted to be there. They joined the military to get college degree or whatever. I joined because I wanted to go to combat. That's the only fucking reason that I took that route. And I'm standing right there watching it, and I didn't, I didn't get a shot at it. So when we rotated back, and also I'd been trying to get over to Tier 1 unit, and I'm not saying I would have made it, but I would have liked to have had the opportunity to try out. Yeah. But the Marines wouldn't let guys go over there then. They opened it up the very next year, and a lot of Marines did go over there and cross the fence. Some are still over there doing great work. But
so that was the catalyst to say, "Fuck this, I'm getting out."
Yeah, I thought too the war was over, because I'm like, I don't want to go back to the peacetime military and doing MEU workups and shit. So I was like, this is my end of active service was in. It was supposed to be in February of 2004, but I just, got early. I got out early. No, it wasn't, because I re-enlisted. So it was like October of 2003. So anyway, I ended up getting out in October 2003. I thought the war was over. And I was like, but it was weird because I was still exposed to all, back then we thought they had chem bio and stuff. I mean, we were expecting at least 30% casualties, at least, So all those emotions and all that stress and, all the things that feed into like living fully in the present. Like the future doesn't matter. Like we didn't talk, I'm sure it was like this with your guys too, that we didn't, when we trained, we'd sit around and bullshit about, we're going to go to Ruth's Chris after this, or, go have a big steak or whatever. But when I went over there, it was like, I'm not even thinking about what happens next. I'm not, because I'm here to do this. And for one, I didn't want to jinx myself, and but the focus was fully on the present.
Yeah.
And I think when you operate like that, one thing I did learn from that experience is when you give that up, your future is something that you've been building in your mind since you're a kid. Like it starts out, a couple days in advance, and as you get older, weeks and years, what do I do with my life and this and that. When you go to combat, you have to live in the moment. And I think the present, I think eternity intersects with time in the present only. And so you were living right then. I remember a Marine in Fallujah wrote something about living 20 seconds at a time. And so whether or not, and we got shot at with scuds and shit a lot, but during the invasion. So there was that stress, I could get whacked any minute. But I think I see this a lot with guys that combat veterans, is they kind of give up their future in a way because they have to. They can't be thinking about it. And when you live in the present for that long, you forget when you get back that you got to start that shit up again. Because you're so focused on the now. And if you aren't focused on the now, you're going to give up your future because you're going to get fucking killed or you're going to make a mistake. So I didn't realize that for a long time. That I think that's why there's so much hopelessness and stuff in a lot of veterans, is because there's no long shot or Hail Mary or fuck yeah, I'm going to do this anymore, because they kind of forget. No one tells them when they get back, you start building your future again, buddy. Yeah. So I think it was weird because I didn't directly even participate in it. I didn't get any gunfights or anything during that war, but it definitely had an effect on me, and I think that was probably the biggest effect that it had on me, is learning that.
Right.
And I think overall, I've thought about this a lot, and especially for elite operators, I thought the Marine Corps was training me to be just more proficient than the next guy at the art of war. That's what being elite is, but that's not it. What set us apart wasn't what we knew about war. You can teach anyone how to use a radio or call in an airstrike or, but what set us apart was what we knew about ourselves, because we had been there. We knew that we could do things that we previously didn't think were possible. I remember being off the coast of California doing a fishing charter or something, and looking at the coast, and it was probably 15 miles away. And I'm like, how could someone drown if they can see the fucking shore? It just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because we had conditioned ourselves to do those things. Yeah. And then, so I think it's what you know about you that makes you an elite operator.
Yeah.
And that applies to more than just military shit. That applies to everything in life.
Right. So what was the next step then? You get out, and did you jump right into contract type work, or?
No, I went to Bible school again, actually. In Colorado, in Estes Park, they had a little school up there in the mountains, and I just wanted to kind of get away from everything and reset and figure out what I wanted to do next. And I wanted to see, I'd grown up and, learn about the Bible and all this stuff. I kind of wanted to deep dive it and see, does this shit really add up? Because if it doesn't, I'm not gonna believe in it. I've heard people say, "Oh, I sure hope there's a God," and fuck, I wish there wasn't. I want to do whatever the fuck I want, man. And I'm not gonna go. I remember this chick in Boulder while I was there in Colorado. She was telling me about her and her friends. They all got together and they took all the best parts, all the parts they liked out of all the religions that they knew of, and put them all together, and that was their religion. Like, so you just made this up out of thin air, and then you believe in it. Like, why would you harness yourself with that? It's weird. There's some intrinsic need to believe in something, you know. I'm not saying it's God or whatever, but so much so that they manufactured something and then put their faith in that.
Yeah.
And and if that's what I realized, if that's what I was doing, I was going to choose to seek and find the truth. And then I was, like I said before, I was willing to give up whatever I was believing in its place. So that's why I went to Bible school. I wanted to dig into it and see, like, is this real? Is this true? I mean, and of course, you know, with shit like that, you're not going to find a smoking gun type thing that I think proves everything right beyond any need for the faith aspect of it, which is, again, I said, you know, believing in the true things that point to the shit that you can't comprehend. But it was a really good time. It was a really formative time, and it was a good time to just step away from, you know, the Marine Corps, from war, from everything. And I probably shocked the living hell out of a lot of the other little 18-year-old Bible school students because I was fresh right out from Iraq, dude. Yeah. And just straight into the school with all these, you know, 18-year-old Bible school students. But probably scared the hell out of a lot of them. But and I didn't realize it. But so I did that, and then and I was still trying to figure out what to do with my life, and that's when early 2004, the contractors from the Fallujah bridge, and I was like, oh shit, Iraq's getting hot again. And then my buddy called me up. It's like, hey man, there's this new company, and it's all Delta guys. They're all the lead cadre, and they're taking former special operations guys, and they're paying good money. I was like, I guess I'm going back to fucking war. So I jumped on that. I left Bible school early to go to the training with Triple Canopy, and it was a good crew of guys because I mean the attrition rate in that selection course was I was really impressed with it. Yeah. But the thing that was cool was before that time, I mean, different special operations units would work with each other and stuff, but no one really knew. There wasn't a place where there was like an amalgam of everyone from every different special operations kind of pedigree in one place working together. And it was really neat to see. For one, I didn't know how we stacked up against, you know, the Rangers or the SEALs or SF guys, whatever, in shooting or operational, you know, proficiency, whatever. But it was neat to get everyone on the same range, on the same line, on the same program, going through the same training and see what different strengths, different, like SF guys, if you need something, like, hey, we need this rando thing. Yeah. Oh, okay, I got it. You know, they're the guys that you send off to go do shit like that. Like Rangers, I need this freaking thing to go away fast. And you know, they love breaking shit. So it was just really cool to kind of see that. And
if you needed any hair product, you know to go to the SEALs.
Of course.
Need cologne or fucking Axe body spray or some fucking hair gel. I know they got you covered. Yeah.
So that's how I got into that, into contracting, and then.
Did you know Monkey?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, he's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Fucking miss that motherfucker, dude. Yeah, dude. It's in my book, a story about Monkey. We were flying back. I think we were retrograding back out of when Triple Canopy lost the contract to Blackwater. And Monkey and I, we were in Oman, and we were getting ready to, we were supposed to get up at, 08 or whatever, meet in the hotel lobby, and then we were all flying out on the same plane back to the U.S. And, we had all gotten trashed the night before, and I was passed out in my room, and I just woke up suddenly to this massive elbow to my face. And Monkey had jumped. There's two beds in the hotel room. He had jumped off one and,
atomic elbow.
Kamala splash on my fucking face with his elbow. That's how he woke me up. So anyway, he got me up. We went down to get on the plane, and he's like, "Hey, you got an Ambien?" I'm like, "Yeah, here's 2. Here's one for each flight." So anyway, I pass out. I wake up a little later, and I hear all this chicks giggling and stuff. What the hell? I turn around, and there's Monkey sitting in the middle seat of the plane, and he's got all these like 6 Lebanese girls that he's talking to. And but anyway, I get up to go to the bathroom, and people are kind of looking at me weird. I'm like, what the hell? And I get into the bathroom, and sure enough, Monkey had drawn dicks all over my face with a Sharpie. I looked like a coal miner who just hit the dick mother load. So I scrubbed, I spent like 20 minutes scrubbing my face off, and come back out. And I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing, bro? You need to fucking sleep." He's like, "You got any more Ambien?" Like, "Oh, shit, you took both of those?" Yeah. Anyway, so a little while later, I go to sleep, and I wake up, and I hear a commotion behind me, and it's Monkey walking down the aisle with the freaking overhead luggage bin in his hand. He's ripped it off of the airplane. Anyway, I quelled that situation. He didn't get in trouble. The flight attendants were a little upset. But I ran into him like 6 months later on another gig or something. I'm like, "Dude, what the hell?" He's like, he didn't remember any of it.
Oh, I bet.
That's sad,
Classic
dude.
fucking Monkey,
Yeah.
Of all of the trips that you did, because you did that for another 8 years-ish.
Yeah.
Right? And you did Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Israel, Lebanon, right?
I didn't do Syria and Lebanon, no. I did. So I did after. I was in Ramadi, which was insane in 2004. That was just crazy. Our team was called Team Miami, and I think we were the most. I think we got in more gunfights than any other security detail in country. That at least we did for triple camp.
Yeah,
it was more than any of them, but it was every single day.
And was it kind of the standard? You guys are taking somebody to meet somebody else, and you get contacted, or was there all kinds of scenarios where you're getting in gunfights?
Well, most of it was we'd take the State Department rep for Anbar Province, and that was the Triangle of Death, back then. And we were the only game in town. It was just the military, and we were the only PSD there for many months. Later, some Aegis guys came in, and they got blown up the first day, and they never went out again. But anyway, we'd take our State Department rep to the government center downtown Ramadi, or we'd take them to Fallujah for meetings there with the Marines, and because the 2004 that's when battles of Fallujah took place. The first battle happened early in the year, and then in November they went in and cleared it out for the second battle. So all the leading up to that, all the meetings, everything. General Mattis was always at these meetings because he was running the show there at the time, and he was hilarious. He'd show up all dirty and sweaty and to these meetings. Like, what the hell? And so I talked to his PSD guys, and I'm like, what? Why are you guys always late for all your meetings and worn out by the time you get here? That the general has a standing order that if we take fire, we stop, locate, close with, kill the enemy by fire and maneuver. Anytime anyone shot at them, they'd stop and kill them all, and then they'd keep going. So, and they had Cobras and support. Anyway, so all the high level meetings and stuff, we would be taking our State Department guy to, and we'd work all the way out to the Jordanian border, and so doing that. It was really interesting. We used all armored BMWs and Mercedes.
And they were like the big V10, V12 monster fucking engine ones, right?
Like level 7 friggin' armor, or level 5 at least back then. But yeah, so there's 17,000 pound friggin' tank hurtling down the.
Do you know what engines they were rocking?
Some of them had the V12. I was driving a S600, and it was factory armored. The Beamers, when you turn the key on, it said bulletproofing, because armored in the factory there in Germany. I think this S600 had a V10. It was either V10 or V12.
You know, horsepower-wise?
I don't know what it was, man, but they were, because those things could still move, even though they were so heavy. But if you had to move someone out of the way, bink, and you just pop them off the road.
Yeah.
But we would cruise at, our cruising speed was 120 miles an hour on the main highways. So I was eventually lead car driver. So I'd have to push up to 140, and you're driving 140 miles an hour. The road is 160 degrees, with the ambient temperatures like 110. So at that speed, those tires would just fail sometimes.
Yeah.
And so you're doing 120 miles an hour, and your tire goes out on you. So we had to rehearse tire changing drills. You had to be able to change a tire in under 2 minutes on a sedan. Later, we incorporated Suburbans because some of our cars got shot up, and so then we'd slow it down to 100. But it was like combat race car driving. The guys the Southern boys who were really into NASCAR, they had some really good. Like I was saying, everyone contributes different shit, and so they knew all about running, different shit about tires.
Yeah. I mean, something as simple as decreasing tire pressure significantly in that environment can help with that. Cause, heat increases it. So,
the type of tires we were using, Pirelli P0s, which really held up well.
Yeah, and they're run flats, right?
Well, run flats have that donut thing in them.
Yeah.
And that would have disintegrated at 100 miles an hour, So, but the P0 tires, I don't know if they have they have really rigid sidewalls.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a honeycomb in there. I'm not sure, but for some reason those tires would hold up at least until you could get stopped. But then they were pretty much in ribbons by the time you got the car stopped. But it was sketchy because when they'd blow out, you don't get to pick where the thing blows out. So you just had to get out. The other cars would come up as we just jump out and pull security and start changing that tire as fast as you could. One time, one of the cars broke down right on the other side of the Cloverleaf in Fallujah there.
Oh, man.
All the tanks were up on the Cloverleaf shooting into Fallujah, and all the RPGs were flying past the tanks and blowing up all around us when we were trying to fix the goddamn car. So it was always interesting, but it was a really, I don't think anyone had ever done that kind of. We had to develop new tactics and shit for personal security, and a lot of those guys that. The Delta guys, they had done PSD stuff in Lebanon and stuff in the 80s, and so they had some level of really good foundational understanding of what was needed to do that. Which is, thank God we had them around. But then we just built on that, and we just kind of had to come up with our own TTPs and on how to do personal security in that environment. So, and the Marines were great that we worked with there. We developed really good relationships with them, and they actually gave us a 119 Foxtrot radios so we could talk to the air, and they gave us everything they could. And we would be. So, and answer your question a while ago, you're thinking, how did those gunfights start? Usually, we'd go downtown to Ramadi, or in Ramadi, and to the government center, and pretty much every day or every other day for meetings with the local government leaders there, and that's when they'd come out and hit us. You'd see kites go up, and then the streets would start to empty, and then garage doors would close to the shops, and then sure as shit, you're in a full-fledged gunfight, and a few minutes later with just right next to the Marines, just from the rooftops. And
were most of those breaking contact and just trying to get out of there, or would you sit there and stand and fight with them a lot of times?
We would stand and fight with them. The team got hit a couple times before I got there. They had been on the ground for a month and a half or 2 months, I think, before I got there. And they had, they'd taken an RPG to one of the vehicles, fucked it all up, but there was no one in it. No one had got hurt or anything. But the first real significant contact we made was in August that year, because they were still recovering from the first Battle of Fallujah. All the bad guys were. So there was a little lull there, but then in August they started really getting hot on us in Ramadi, and it's actually on YouTube. It's if you look up RPG machine gun ambush Ramadi or something like that on YouTube, it's on Live Leaks. But I don't know who leaked it, but there's a dash cam from one of our cars during that ambush. What happened? We drove in to the government center, and then we got the word through an intel source that they literally, quote, foreign fighters are lining the streets waiting for you to hit you on the way back. And we were there with the Marine Corps contingent too, and we're like, are they after the Marines or after us? Like, no, they're after the half-beards. They call us the half-beards because a lot of guys had goatees.
Yeah.
And so we're like, fuck, here we go, man. And so we pulled out and out of the government center, which that place was pretty well fortified. It had high walls and sandbagged up and everything. We pulled out of there and we're on our way back, and the traffic was super congested. There were broken down vehicles scattered around, they had put broken down vehicles in, or they just popped the hoods on these cars and put them in, at all the intersections. So all the traffic had to go down Michigan, which was the main artery there through town. So we took an alternate route, and as soon as we turned down that road, we're like, something's eerily wrong here. There were some cinder blocks and stuff on the road, but we couldn't turn around and just sit in traffic on Michigan. So we're like, let's push through. And what that intel report saved our asses, because we got there before they were fully ready to initiate the ambush. But sure enough, we're driving down the road, and out of the corner of my eye, see guys running with PKMs and RPGs and AKs. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. And the shift leader got on the radio, and everyone got on the radio at the same time, stepped on each other. So there's no cohesive command, but obviously reverse out and get the hell out of there. So the lead car nosed in, was getting ready to turn around. I was driving the limo at the time. I had the State Department guy, the principal, with me. And I backed in to turn it, to accelerate out and go left and back down toward Michigan. And as soon as I backed into this, backed up on this curb, I hear the principal and the agent in charge, who's a SF dude, he's like, RPG, RPG, RPG. Sure enough, man, 20 feet away is the guy standing there with his RPG pointed at my face, dude. I'm like, oh, fuck, this is going to hurt really bad. And, but he popped back down out of sight. I guess he forgot to take the safety off or something. Anyway, he didn't take the shot. So, but then I'm getting ready to pull out and accelerate back down toward toward Michigan. And I realized I didn't back up far enough. I'm going to hit that fucking curb in the middle of the road, and there's a telephone pole there too. So I had thrown it in reverse, and then I threw it in drive, and then I had to throw it in reverse again. So I'm just sitting there on the X,
Doing the Austin Powers in the fucking hallway.
Yeah, just sitting there, and there's shit popping off all around. And so I was like, fuck, I had to throw it in reverse again. So I threw it in reverse, and right as I threw it in reverse, the guy popped up from about 20 feet to my left and shot an RPG. I think he thought I was going to go forward, and said I went backward. And it went right past, over the hood of the car, and it blew up about 150, 200 meters down the road where the follow car was hauling ass to get out of there. So it blew frag all over the car. And follow car also picked up a good PKM, just hammering the right rear window. But the armor held. Wow. I was impressed. One bullet made it through the crease, and it lodged in the headrest behind my buddy Sonny. He's a SF guy, medic, but Sonny had his lucky earplug in that day, I guess he said. But the car kept going. It was gushing fuel and everything everywhere. And anyway, so they took off down one road. I finally pulled my head out of my ass, and I'm heading back, doing like 100 miles an hour just to get the fuck out of Dodge. And I either hit a rock or my left front tire got shot out, but those tires, they held up really well. So I was actually in front of everyone coming back out of Michigan, and I started nudging cars out of the way with that S600. And like I said, that 17,000 pounds, man, you just touch someone and you're flying off the road. Yeah. So then the follow car got turned around, and they got out of there. And anyway, we ended up getting back to base, and we lived through it, but we were freaking pissed because we didn't kill one of them. So we failed, in our minds. So after that, we're like, next time they fuck with us, they're gonna learn who they're fucking with. Yeah. So after that, dude, fortunately, we never. That's the most vulnerable time, is when you're mobile, because once the armor disintegrates, or you have to unass the vehicle, and you're in the middle of the city, and there's only 8 guys or 12 guys. And literally they had all, Zarqawi was in Ramadi at that time. So all the brains of the bad guys were in Ramadi, and they were orchestrating all the stuff in Fallujah. So there were some really bad actors in there then. But anyway, after that, every time we went down to the government center, pretty much every time they'd show up, and like I said, the kites would go up. They'd use the kites to signal, like, these alleyways are clear or whatever. Yeah. And the Iraqi police weren't helping either. They would go hand off their AKs to the bad guys. And so after a while, it was like, ROE was, if you see an AK, shoot them. Wow. Even guys in police uniforms, because you couldn't trust anyone. So, right. Yeah, it was the wild freaking West out there for a long time, man.
So in subsequent trips, were there times where you made contact and you guys just fucking pull over and just start getting after it? We
would, sometimes we would roll around the parts of town where they didn't expect us to be. I'm not saying we were out looking for trouble or anything, but we'd do route recons and stuff without the client sometimes, just to familiarize the new guys. But the thing is, we couldn't really. Most of the gunfights we got into were on some hard point or another. Like I said, fortunately, they didn't really hit us again. They tried to a couple times, especially on those AFAMs, to get us, but we just show up in a part of town that no one went to, and so like literally you'd see them do a double take and think, oh, those are Americans in those cars, and they'd haul ass to get all their guns and shit, and then we'd get a little tick there, but it was never anything really. Yeah. Because if the problem is those vehicles, they're really hard to replace when they get shot up, and we lost several of them, and then we had to, beg, borrow, and steal to get new parts and stuff like that. So we were really careful with what we had as far as cars. We couldn't risk too much, but we wanted to let them know, like, hey, don't fuck with us. Yeah. So that's why when the other personal security details came in, those guys got freaking hammered because they knew, don't fuck with the guys in the blue Beamers. Yeah. My team's like stacked some bodies.
Oh shit.
In Ramadi, yeah.
Those vehicles do you know if does Triple Canopy have to provide those, or does the government supply them for you guys? How does that work?
I think, I don't know how it works now with that stuff. I think the State Department provides all the vehicles in their security programs, but at that time, I believe Triple Canopy was contracted to provide the vehicles. So they ended up ordering a bunch of them from South America, and they were looking all over the place. They had guys going all over trying to find these things. Yeah. Because they are a little bit hard to come by. But man, I developed a great respect for German engineering. Those things, they're badass cars, man.
In the instances where you guys were stacking bodies, were they all instances where you're just kind of breaking contact, or were there any occurrences where you guys either got caught in a position or took up a position where you're just like, fuck it, we're going to go toe-to-toe with them?
Well, the government center, the principal one time is like, we can leave if you guys want, or we could stay here a little longer. I mean, so he knew. And we never got in a place where we're like, oh, we need a hard point and stack mags and frags and freaking fight to the death. Because most of the places we would go to had, they were OPs and stuff all up and down Michigan that the Marines would use, and different buildings that we'd go to were usually pretty, not necessarily reinforced, but we made it work. Yeah. But the Marines had put T-walls and stuff up and down Michigan, so there was pretty decent cover and concealment in all the places we ended up. But I remember one time standing in the middle of the frickin' street, and it was the only place I could stand. I had an RPD. And just standing there on a knee in the street with my ass hanging out in the breeze, looking down this one alley. And I just had to trust the guys to my left and right, because if anyone popped out of any of the adjacent alleys, they had to take them out before. Yeah. And I was just waiting for someone to come around the corner. That's probably the most, I thought I was going to get zapped on that one. But.
Yeah, wow. How many trips did you do to Iraq?
Let's see. That first, on that contract, I did... I was there until March of the next year. I think it was March or April of the next year. And so I think I did 2-3 month trips and a 4-month gig.
As far as Afghanistan goes, was it pretty similar work, or was there any big disparities between?
Well, I wasn't working for the State Department in Afghanistan. I was working for someone else. And can't go into too much detail on that.
I gotcha. The time that you spent in Israel-Palestine area, especially with what's going now, I'd love to get just your take on that, as well as the experience there and what you thought of it.
Yeah, it was actually a really interesting time to be there because I was actually boots on the ground. I got there. I spent some time as an instructor for Triple Canopy, teaching the guys for their State Department program and teaching the instructors, the new instructors coming in as well. I taught for about 5 months. And then the Israeli gig popped up. So I jumped on that, went over there. And that was the beginning of, it was the end of 2005. So right in 2006, that's when Hamas won the elections. And actually, I was carting around Joe Biden that day, and no one expected Hamas to win because it was just like a token. They're on the ballot or whatever. But I think it was a couple days before the elections, Fatah got busted doing some bullshit with stealing money or something like that, and so all the public opinion swayed against Fatah. And Hamas started winning the elections, but we didn't really realize it because we're mobile and we're going from one polling station to the next, showing our support of the diplomatic process and all this stuff. And Jimmy Carter was there. I mean, there were tons of politicians and diplomats and stuff all throughout, just touring and shaking hands and all that garbage. And we didn't realize how dangerous it was because as the Hamas guys started realizing, holy shit, we're going to win this, they started flooding the polling stations. So we show up in East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is Palestinian. And we show up over there to a polling station, and Joe is shaking hands and, trying to do all that. But then all of a sudden you could tell kind of who the instigators were, start yelling about, Guantanamo Bay and this and that. And he's trying to explain shit to him, and he's not understanding that the tactical situation, like this is about to get dicey. Anyway, start kind of converging in. And the biggest threat in Palestine, at least in the West Bank, Gaza is a lot more kinetic. And I didn't do any trips inside Gaza when I was there. Went down to the gates and stuff every once in a while. But then the West Bank, the mobs were the worst part because there's no sense of responsibility in a mob mentality. They will just rip your freaking face off and tear you a million different pieces and light you on fire, and you're done. So, and if you get surrounded in a vehicle, an armored Suburban can only plow through so many, people. So
before you high center on them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest threat. And I start seeing this mob kind of form, and it's closing in on us. And so I was like, all right, we got to go, sir. So it was probably 2 minutes from being a freaking shit show. But anyway, so I got him out of there. And
what was your impression of him at that time? I know back then he was quite a bit different than he has been in the last few years, but
I thought he was seemed like a thoughtful guy, I didn't know him personally or anything like that, but but at the same time, definitely a politician.
Yeah.
And kind of just like most of them, really unaware of a lot of the nuance of the region, not just tactically, but when you come and spend 4 days in a place that has been, had strife going on for the last how many thousands of years, and you can't really get a really clear picture on what. I thought I understood it before I went over there, and it just living there for a year and a half. It's just a giant fucking tangle fuck, man. And there's not one thread you can pull to unravel the whole thing. Yeah. I did get some pretty good perspective on it though, because Obama was actually there. I carted him around too, but no one knew. I didn't know who he was. No one on the team did because he hadn't announced he's running for president. So he actually got really pissed off at me. We were in this meeting in the West Bank, and it started raining real bad. And we'd staged the armored vehicle. It wasn't super high threat in the West Bank. There were times where it was like, don't go in there. But it was pretty permissive at this time. So we'd staged armored vehicles in alleyways and stuff. We never had them sitting all out front. Just so obviously that's a big signature. Like there's obviously a meeting going on there with the Americans. So we'd kind of hide them around within several blocks of the meeting place. And usually the State Department regional security officer would get on the radio when the meeting started breaking up and be like, okay, the meeting's breaking up. So, okay, get the vehicles out here, line them up so we can get everyone in them as soon as they break cover from the building, get them into the cars and just move directly out. But Obama just came walking out in the street, and there's about that much water in the street. It was raining cats and dogs, and the vehicles were just coming up because we didn't have the time to get them all lined up. Well, he got in the wrong vehicle, and he's really pissed off at me. But so we went to the Muqada, the Palestinian White House, to see Mahmoud Abbas, and his tie was in the other car, and the regional security officers running around. And anyway, finally got it all in fucked, but he was all kinds of pissed. And so I come up to the regional security officer, like, okay, who the fuck is that guy anyway? I'm like, I don't know, some new Senator Obama or something like that.
Yeah, that's wild, man.
That's crazy. Yeah. But I got some really good perspective. Another gig I did was in Tel Aviv, and for about a month I was the agent in charge of Lieutenant General Keith Dayton, who was there as a special appointee from the president. And it was really interesting tooling around with him because I'd be in meetings and stuff with him. And he was a really neat guy. He read a lot, and at the time I was very, avid reader as well. And so we'd kind of share, like, you should read this book or that. Well, he showed me the book Fiasco. I forget who the author is, but it's about the invasion of Iraq. And he said, you should read this. And I did, and it was all about, the GOs at that time, Petraeus and Odierno and all these guys. And General Dayton was like buddies with these dudes. So I would get the inside baseball. I got the inside baseball on the whole invasion of Iraq. Dayton's job, I think it was a 2-star during the invasion. His job was to go find the WMDs. So, he was right in the middle of all that and getting all the pressure from the White House to, where are they? You got to find these things, validate your freaking presence there. So it was a really unique experience being able to spend time with guys that close to what was going on and who had personal opinions of different characters like Petraeus, Odierno, and others who, were running the place and who stayed involved in Iraq for, many years. So it was a really good education as far as what was going on there, as well as what the U.S. was doing with the Palestinians in Gaza and in other places. So because he would have sidebar meetings that the State Department guys weren't privy to. So it was kind of neat because I got to see the stuff. I got to do the USAID runs and stuff, whatever, no big deal. But I got to sit in on those kind of meetings. I got to see what was going on from the State Department side and just kind of get a holistic perspective on what's actually happening here. So after a few months, I started kind of getting a better understanding of kind of the inside baseball, what was really taking place there, what the U.S. was trying to accomplish, and this and that. And some of it I probably can't go into, and some of it I don't know whether I can or not, so I'll just shy away from it. But I think just my personal opinion, the biggest issue there, and I'm no diplomat or anything, but I think the biggest issue there is it's all wishful and emotional response to things that have happened in the past. And no one is saying, look, guys, this is where we are right now. Whether who did what to who, it doesn't matter. You'll never be able to go back and fix all those problems on either side. And I've seen the Israelis instigate the shit out of the Palestinians, and then the Palestinians respond in a token response, and then wham! They would do that a lot. So it's not just the Palestinians acting up and being rowdy. There are abuses, and there's complete bullshit on both sides of that equation. It's not one side or the other, and you can't unravel it. But no one is saying, hey, where are we now? Okay, we have these people groups that live in this place on this planet Earth. What are we going to do about that? What can we do now from where we are now, no matter who did what in the past? What can we do right now going forward and quit pointing fingers and blaming, well, you guys did this, and no shit. But what can we do now to make this a peaceful place where human beings can live and prosper without having to be in fear of some kind of violent action that just out of the woodwork? And that's on both sides.
So, I mean, to quantify that you can't unravel a single thread, from having spent a fair bit of time there years ago and just seeing what's taken place there over since you were there, do you have a perspective on how you would approach fixing it?
Well, for one, I think I'm sure a lot has changed there since I was there. But
in some ways,
what it's going to take is someone actually no shit being serious about wanting to solve the problem, and not leveraging the problem to benefit their side.
Yeah. All right, so you did a fair bit of contracting work in a host of different environments in the Middle East, but then you moved into, if I have this correct, kind of a tech, like a consultant in tech development phase.
Yeah, so when I was in Afghanistan, I started working on my degree because I was like, I'm going to have something to fall back on. The only way to stay in the gunfighter trade your whole life is if you die at the end of it.
Yeah.
That's not a good option.
You end it there.
A good option. And it's kind of like being a stripper. The money's good and it's fun, but the longer you do it, the less marketable you are anywhere else. Yeah. So I was like, I kind of need to transition out and get into. And plus, I was married. I'd gotten married, and my marriage was struggling and shit because of me being gone all the time. And so I wanted to get a job back in the States. So eventually. So I got my degree in international business from some bullshit online university, when I was over there doing missions during the night or in the day, and then doing homework. It was bizarre, switching up the way of what your whole mindset has to change. But after a couple of years, I finally got the goddamn degree, and that opened up so many opportunities for me, of other types of work, obviously. So I had a buddy who, back when all the BFPs and stuff started clacking off in Iraq, mostly, they started a thing called JIDO. You remember JIDO, Joint IED Defeat Organization?
Big time I do, because dogs ended up being the best capability out of that entire $2 and some odd billion fucking program, because that was a big part of what catapulted special operations into really launching canine programs autonomous to each special operations group. Was because of the JIDO founding. So I was
it was great. It was like a big pot of money you could go to get shit that you really needed, and a lot of programs have persisted, like you said, because of that. But part of JIDO was the COIC, the Counter Operations Intelligence Counter IED Operations Intelligence Integration Center. And what that was, it was a big it was a big building in Northern Virginia with a bunch of really friggin' smart people in it, and they were doing data aggregation and doing analysis. They had an analysis cell that would, any special ops unit in anywhere in the world could call them and say, hey, we need to do a study on this, and I need it in 24 hours. What's going on with this village and what's the background? And these guys would deep dive this, and come up with the product, an intelligence product, and they did some. They didn't do direct targeting, but they had assisted in building targeting packages and stuff. Anyone could go to them and say, "Hey, we need some intel support right now," and boom, they get it. But part of that was all the data, and up until then, and even now, up until then, you only got access to the information, most likely from your unit, your organization, whatever. There wasn't much data sharing going on prior to that. Well, and in fact, that was a problem the 9/11 report came up with, is like, hey, we need to share information across the departments and everything. Not everyone's sharing. So the COEC stood up what's called the first distributed common ground system internet integrated backbone, they called it. And that was the first working product of the 9/11 reports that would actually share and aggregate data. So they would find data everywhere, and then they would, like, for lack of a better word, they'd index it. And so if you did a search from a COEC machine, you could reach into a lot of different pots of information, including the intelligence community. Parts of it, there were parts that supported Tier 1, but they kind of already had their own stuff going on. So a lot of really good support, especially for the conventional forces and for vanilla soft, you want it, for lack of a better word. Anyway, and then they had a contingent in Bagram, and my buddy, he was the project manager for the Bagram deal, supporting all this stuff downrange. And I got in touch with him. I was like, hey, man, I'm kind of getting tired of this gunslinging thing. I need to figure out something else to do. And he's like, I got you covered, buddy. So he wrote the letter to the guy in charge of the COEC and in the U.S. and ended up getting me a job there. I was like, oh, perfect. So my understanding was I was going to be like some kind of special operations liaison, explaining shit to the analysts, like, this is what this, just a translator, that job did exist there, but that's not the job that I got. And I should have clued me in, because my buddy who got me the job, he said, do you know anything about networks? I'm like, what do you mean? What kind of networks? He's like, oh, geez. All right, go on Wikipedia and look up computer network. I was like, okay. So that's where I started. That's how much I knew about this.
Sound like the perfect guy for the job.
I know, exactly. You.
U.S. government strikes again.
Exactly. So anyway, I show up to the COEC, and they're like, you're in charge of all the special operations data centers that we have around the world. Okay, I'm not going to blow my cover that I don't know what the hell's going on, and I figured it out fairly quickly. But I just remember, man, talking about drinking from a fire hose. Like I said, there was, like, my direct boss was actually a rocket scientist. Like, he had worked for NASA and stuff. It was just big brain dudes in that building. Anyway, they were. They didn't act like they caught on to my ineptitude, and I learned fast. So I remember having a list of acronyms on my desk, and I'd be in conversations with people on the phone, because I'm managing these all over the freaking world, probably eight or so of these things, and talking to other people in the COEC proper, and I'm just kind of looking out of one corner of my eye at this list of acronyms, trying to figure out what the hell they're saying. But I muddled through pretty good, and I ended up learning it pretty well, to the degree that the really value add that I was there is, again, operational context. I understood the context of the operator and the end user, especially in that case, the special operations guy. Granted, I hadn't been an operator in DOD for a while, but I knew I still understood it. I could relate well to them and figure, like, this is what they need. And and I think that goes for a lot of veterans. I don't think, in many cases, I've been surprised at what I what I know that I didn't think that I did. And it's not always, it's a lot of it's, soft skills, so to speak. But in getting immersed in that, I learned everything about like big data sharing, all this stuff that I previously had known nothing about, and data fusion, all this stuff. And it occurred to me, like, look, at the time the VSO program was going on. I remember the Village Stability Operations program. And so like an ODA would be in there, and then maybe MARSOC det or a SEAL platoon would go in and rip each other out, and there was no continuity of data, or information. So
just a high five and a slap on the ass.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and that can put you in a bad spot if you're just doing a weak handover. Like the village elder told me that the last guy said he'd give me a Ferrari. So where's my Ferrari? And it just wasn't optimal. One of the SF guys I worked with said, we aren't fighting Operation Enduring Freedom 9 or whatever. We're fighting Operation Enduring Freedom 1 the 9th time because there's no continuity and turnover. And VSO was really good. Scott Mann ran that program.
Yeah, he's been on the show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Amazing guy.
Yeah.
Good dude. And brilliant.
Good kisser, too, by the way. Great. Soft hands, good kisser. He's got a gentle touch.
Yeah. Oh, kudos, Scott. Yeah. So, anyway, I kind of set out to build, after kind of seeing a gap there and realizing there's no way to share data among like the SEALs, SF, and MARSOC especially, because they were primarily doing the VSO stuff. But not just for VSO, but for everything. Like US SOCOM doesn't. They had all their data, Skunk Works and everything going on there, but they didn't have anything for that level of granularity. And, in cases you could get like a roll up from 5th group or whatever, 7th group or whatever, and that would have, reports from all their ODAs and stuff. But only the thing is, if an ODA sent in a report, it would go up to the company and then go up to the battalion, and they'd scrub out the stuff that didn't matter to the company, they'd scrub out the stuff that didn't matter to the battalion commander, and then they'd put it in the system so everyone could query it. Well, that's not fucking useful to a guy in a team out on the pointy end anymore. So there was no like transfer and place to go to like say, okay, what do the last guys who were in this village do? Let me see all their reports, their daily roll-ups, whatever it was. So I thought up this thing called the SOF, Special Operations Inner Ring, and that was basically a data sharing platform to facilitate that. And so my boss at the time was the guy that was running that Centric Innovation Division there, which I was under. He was a Marine colonel. And so me and him kind of went on a wild rodeo, just going from the TSOCs, a lot of the component commands, and kind of getting backing for this idea. And sure enough, we built it, and US SOCOM adopted it as a program of record like a few months later. So it was a good experience for me because I was like, oh, I can do something other than pulling triggers. Like, okay, I can be good at other shit. And that all happened from me looking up networks on Wikipedia to implementing this new system inside US SOCOM. It was like 8 months. So it was awesome. A hell of a learning curve.
Yeah, that's super cool. Beyond that, is that what you spent the bulk of your time in that capacity doing, or did you do other projects? That
was about it for when I was working at the COIC. After that, it was implemented and stuff. My job was kind of over. I had to turn over the techies, and so I was kind of floating around looking for something to do. And I got on with an organization there called, at the time it was called CTTSO, the Combating Terrorism Technical Support Office. And now it's called Irregular Warfare Support, Technology Support Directorate or something like that, ISTWD. Anyway, CTTSO was what it was called then, and their mandate was anything that any special ops dudes, or any, not just special operations, but anyone combating terrorism. So it wasn't just DOD, it was anyone. If they need some widget built, we'll do it. If you can't buy it anywhere off the shelf or anything like that, we'll go to the companies that need to build this thing, and wham, we'll get it built within a few months. It was really cool. A lot of cool stuff came out of it, and still does. They're really one of the most highly functional and relevant government organizations I've ever had the pleasure of dealing with. And
That's
so
awesome.
I was the advanced analytics subject matter expert for them as a independent consultant kind of contractor. So my job was, you remember when they caught bin Laden, they used a computer analytical system called Palantir to do that. And that's basically, it started spun out of PayPal, out of Silicon Valley, and then the CIA got a hold of it and started using it to do advanced analytics and making sense of, okay, this guy's cousin, and he's, this guy's relative, and this is the bomb maker. So creating networks and doing analysis of, pretty much anything, just taking random bits of information and data and putting them into a system that could show you, okay, this is the bad guy. This is
connecting all the dots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the CIA had it, and the U.S. SOCOM wanted it, the TSOCs wanted it, but mostly the guys downrange wanted it, because the Army had a system that didn't really work very well, and there was stuff out there that worked, but nothing that worked as well as this, and nothing in such a compact form factor. You didn't need a mill van full of computer equipment to make it work. You just needed one freaking Pelican case and laptop, and you could derive all kinds of intelligence from it, which was really neat, because that moved the onus of developing target packages and stuff from a headquarters kind of function down to the team function. So you could be a freaking 18 Fox sitting there on a freaking computer and building your own target packages. Wham!
That's badass.
It was super cool. Yeah. And what that did was, you have the operations, the intel. I remember when I was in, you'd get your intel brief before mission, the weather's this and this and that. Mostly most of what they did, other than telling you your target and all that, was they were just thirsty as hell for any intel you had when you came back from the op. And of course, in reconnaissance, that was our job. But the operations intel loop was really slow, is one point. But what this did, it just kind of shrunk it down into one thing. So you develop, you do operations to get more intel, to do more operations, to get more intel, and it just became a revolving thing. The Israelis call it intelligence-driven combat.
Yeah.
And in that, the Marine Corps has adopted Palantir heavily. I don't know if they still use it or not, but I'm pretty sure they do. But it was a catalyst to change how the special operations community and the Marine Corps ran their shit. It changed. Just that one piece of technology changed how we thought about war and how we conducted it. So it was a really cool place to be. And so I did that for about a year and a half, 2 years, and just fielding that out to different organizations. And we were pretty heavy working over in Afghanistan at the time too. So it was a neat way to stay plugged into the community and provide real value to it as well.
Oh, that's badass. From the time when you finished that and kind of decided to hang up the contractor side up until you wrote the 2 books and kind of where you're at now, what filled that gap?
Oh man, stuff that's painful, buddy.
Really?
Yeah. So about that time, right toward the end of when I was doing that stuff for CTTSO, I ended up I got separated from my wife, and I had 2 kids at the time. And so my security clearance got suspended suddenly because my kids would come over on the weekends to my apartment, and I had a handgun in my nightstand, so I cleared it and put it in my work bag and put it up in my closet so that my kids couldn't get to it and stuff. And I forgot it was in there. So the next week, I go into the government building where I work, and this was right after the Navy Yard shootings.
Oh wow!
Where that guy opened up with a shotgun and on all his coworkers, like a month after. And so they were doing bag checks. They'd never done bag checks before, but anyway, they're doing bag checks this day. And I put my bag down, and I'm standing in line for like 15 minutes waiting to get my turn, and then put my bag down, and the security officer opens it up and like pulls out this freaking FN X45 tactical, freaking big old handgun, and I was like, oh shit, and I was right. Oh shit was right. So they freaking cuffed me and threw me in the Pentagon jail, drove me over to the Pentagon, threw me in jail, because the building where I worked is called the Mark Center. It was like, it's kind of an annex to the Pentagon, and the Pentagon, their rules for that stuff are, it happens a lot there because you get a lot of DOD guys coming in and out, and some of them forget they have their pistols or whatever on them. So it's like a $50 fine, and you get your gun back, and the Pentagon slap on the wrist. Well, in my building, it fell under the jurisdiction of the, standard whatever jurisdiction, which is it's a federal offense to bring a gun, into a federal building. So, anyway, and they thought I was gonna go and blast, and so I waived my Miranda rights. He's like, you have the right to remain silent. I'm like, I waived my Miranda rights. I'm just going to tell you what happened. And I explained to him what had happened. He said, well, the judge, will probably look upon that favorably. But, yeah. So anyway, they threw me in the jail for a little bit for that day just to make sure I wasn't trying to, kill anyone. And let me go that afternoon, and had suspended my security clearance pending the investigation, where the judge thought that I was actually going to go try and, go nuts. And there was not even any ammo in the bag or anything like that. So, but I was still sweating it, I could have ended up in prison for that. And so I just lost my job overnight, boom, done. And so I was going through a divorce, lost my job, lost my security clearance, and it took them 9 months to reinstate the thing. So during that time, the judge waived. The magistrate saw the recordings of me standing there waiting in line with my bag, and he's like, oh, obviously this guy has no malicious intent or whatever. So they threw it out, but it took them 9 months to reinstate the clearance. So during that time, I'm trying to figure out what the hell to do, and it was a really dark time. Not to mention all the being away from my kids and all. It was rough. So I'm sitting there feeling sorry for myself. I'm like, what the hell? I can't do anything. I'm at square zero. I have nothing. I have no job, no prospects for a job, because I don't have any work history outside of military DOD type stuff. I don't have a security clearance. I can't go back overseas and start contracting again. What the hell am I going to do? So, and then it like occurred to me out of the blue. Like, I'm at square zero. That means I can do whatever the fuck I want. It's like, okay, well, what do I really want? What do I really want to do in this life? If I could pick anything in the world, now's the fucking time. Yeah, I want to be a writer. And I was almost like afraid to want it, because it seemed like something too, maybe, I might not make it or something like that. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm going to be a writer. And it was a very pivotal moment in my life. And it's one that brought light back into my life, but it took a long time. So I went on social media, and I'm like, told all my friends, I'm a writer, because I figured if I own that, then I have to own it. You know what I mean? So I just told them this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm a writer now. And I just started writing, and I I didn't know what I was going to write. I was thinking probably novels or something like that. Wasn't sure, but I just started. I was going through all this really difficult life stuff, and so I just started writing down little things as they occurred to me and things that would help me, would help me out, and I thought that might be able to help others. But I wasn't doing it like to write a book. I was just scribbling shit down. Around that time, my buddy who had gotten me the job at the COEC, he was now working in Uganda he was a managing director for like a nonprofit aviation company over there. Because he had done stuff with L3 over there when they were doing the search for what's his name, the guy with the child soldiers and all that.
I can't think of the name. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, so he was running all the ISR platforms for them, and so he was very well established there. So he ended up taking over after that program ended. He got on with this nonprofit aviation company. He had this big house on the beach of Lake Victoria, like all colonial style, whitewashed pillars, and garden, and it was beautiful. Anyway, he's like, well, if you don't have anything to do, why don't you just come over here and you can stay here? I have an extra wing of the house. You can just stay there and write. And at first I was like, I can't, I got bills to pay. And I kind of blew it off. And then he offered it again. And then I realized, bills, like, if I didn't live here, I wouldn't have these bills. Yeah. Like, all right, I'm going to do it. So I was like, all right, fuck it. I guess I'm going to Uganda. So I went over, got on a plane to Uganda, and I didn't know what I was going to do. It was a one-way ticket, and a lot of the people, a lot of my friends and stuff were like, what the hell are you doing, dude? And I, thought I was making a big mistake, but it turned out to be one of the, probably the best decision of my life, if not one of them, as far as just committing to something, like.
Yeah, how long did you stay there for?
I was only there for a couple months because I had forgotten actually about it. When I was in the States, I'd seen an email pop up on my feed about, I think it's from the SEAL Future Foundation. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Those guys. And they were helping a company in New York City find interns for this internship program that they had for special operators. And so I saw it. I was like, oh, that'd be a friggin' sweet gig, I'm not doing anything anyway. So I had applied for it, but I'd kind of spaced it, forgotten about it. So I'm in Uganda. It's been about a month. And during that time, I'm just getting up, having my coffee brought to me by the housemaids. And, then I'd just go down to one of the little bar things on the beach of Lake Victoria and get a gin and tonic, and I just write. It was amazing. But you can never have your cake and eat it too, because I had all this other angst and stuff, going on. I'm trying to my kids and my all the stuff going on in my life. It was really, really painful, especially being away from my kids. And but then I get this email that says, hey, you've been selected for this internship program. You still available? So I shot an email back. It's like, yeah, but I'm in Uganda. Can you fly me from here? And so they agreed to do that. So about a month or so into being there, I jump on a plane, go back to New York City, stopped in D.C. and grabbed a suit and drove up to New York, and they put us up in this big friggin', awesome hotels right downtown. And we go into the building there for the interviews. There's about 12 of us, all SF, MARSOC, and SEALs. And I was the only Force Recon guy, but then they put us all in this room. It's, on the 10th floor, all be decked with hardwood, what you'd think, like from the movie Wall Street kind of, big badass office. And we're all sitting around waiting. They call us in one at a time into this room for an interview. And it's my turn finally. I'm like the last guy. And I walk in there, and there's like 4 CEOs of this. It was a company that owned like 265 other companies. So it was a big, huge conglomerate in advertising and marketing. And the CEOs from 4 different companies were sitting across this conference room table. And the idea was that you get on with this internship program. One guy was going to get picked, and then you work for each of those 4 different companies for 3 months. And then after that, they figure out where to place you in the enterprise of companies. If they like, working with you. So anyway, I walk in there and I see there's just like 9 or 10 Fortune 500 company CEOs sitting in this room. And I walked up and I was like, so you're probably wondering why I asked you all to come here today. And they all started laughing. And anyway, after that, we just had a normal conversation, kind of back and forth, and kind of they're feeling me out for if they thought I'd be a benefit to working there. And they're like, so what do you like how do you like to challenge yourself? And I said, well, I'd like to give myself really hard problems and think about them. And from the back corner of the room I hear, so give us an example. I said, all right, well, the other day I was thinking come up with an alternative for the wheel. And they all laughed. And I went, did you come up with any? I was like, yeah, actually I came up with 2 of them. They're like, really? What are they? So I grabbed this little paper plate that had crumbs on it or something, that said someone had a donut or something on there. And I said, look, you can use this in like a disc. If you have a downward facing axle, and this is like at a 45-degree angle, you could just have the discs on the bottom of the car, power the car or whatever. Or you could flip it into a cone. So I made a little cone out of the plate. And I was showing them how you could have, 45-degree angle axles and front and back, or switch them inverted and have basically, like I said, an alternative for the wheel. So anyway, we talked a little bit more, and it was a good interview. I left, and we were all sitting there waiting for, find out who won the thing. And one of the CEOs that was in there walks in, and she's like, all right, just want to congratulate so-and-so. He's a young SEAL. Good job. You've been chosen for the internship program. And I'm like, God damn it. I thought I had it in the bag. Yeah. And then she's like, okay, but Jason Dale, the CEO, he's very interested in you for a direct hire position.
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit. Yeah.
So clearly he had a good sense of humor.
Yeah. Well, he was the guy in the dark corner of the room. Come to find out later that was that. Yeah. Anyway, so, but she said, it's not for sure yet. We'll get in touch with you within a month. So anyway, I went back to Africa, and was writing, but then after a month or so went by, I didn't hear anything. I was starting to get antsy and really wanted that to work out. So I ended up pulling chocks, and I went back to the States, and 39 years old, living in my parents' basement in Oregon. It was rough, but at least I had some hope, And so anyway, Denise, that's the CEO that was talking to me. She got in touch with me about a month later and was like, well, yeah, I don't think it's going to work out. So I was like, God damn it. So I'm moping around for about a week, like, no prospects or anything again. I'm like, well, I'm just going to apply for jobs there. I've already interviewed with them. I'll just apply for jobs with that company. So I applied for a bunch of jobs, and I got back a hold of her. I was like, okay, I applied for these jobs. Like, what do you think? And she's like, you're not going away, are you? Like, no, I'm not. So anyway, she got a hold of Dale, and long story short, a month later, I get a email. Dale wants you to come to New York for further interviews. So I fly back. I had 8 one-hour interviews, or 50-minute interviews over the course of 8 hours, with 8 different CEOs, and then I had lunch with Dale, who's the CEO of the whole thing. Anyway, it went well. It went well enough to where, long story short, he ended up hiring me. So I moved to New York City, and I lived there and right across the river in New Jersey, and every day I'd go over there into Manhattan and high-rise building, the whole 9 yards. My job was to And I got to give kudos to the SEAL Future Foundation for, big time for kind of showing them their in the corporate world, like how valuable the mindset of a special operations guy is. Because like I said before, I knew stuff that I didn't realize that I knew, or I knew how to figure it out. And and they understood that. They understood that these guys think a little bit different. They just see the world in a little bit different way. So it gave value to them. So my job was to come up with, like, basically tackle and provide a perspective on all the big problems that Dale, the head dude, wanted me to work on. And, it was like dream job. And then I realized, what the hell am I going to tell this guy? Because at first I started, like, I had a PowerPoint and all this put together. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to be a Harvard MBA, and I'm definitely not one of those. So no, that's not what we're, So I just threw all that out. And the first meeting I had with him, we just sat down and we talked about basically, like, how do you, it's not about what you know, it's about how you think about what you know. Like, you and I could know the exact same information, but if you're thinking about it right, just like we talked about earlier, if you're thinking about it in the right way and I'm thinking about it a different way, I'm going to be off.
Yeah.
And so, that's the kind of stuff we would talk about. We would talk about basically how the importance of Dale as the CEO, like, how are you doing? Because if you're off, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed, your whole enterprise struggles.
Right.
So that's where we began, and I ended up working on a lot of different issues and problems with that he was. Like, for instance, he wanted me to focus on disruptive change, and because he understood that a lot of disruption was coming out of Silicon Valley, and disruptive change is a good thing, but it's just very uncomfortable, and especially for him, he was looking ahead. He's like, one of these little upstart Silicon Valley companies could come out of nowhere and just totally upset us. How do I get ahead of that? And so I ended up. That's one of the problems he had me thinking about. And it took me, so over the course of months, I'm like thinking about, how do I approach this? But I knew that I'd seen it before, but it didn't really occur to me where. And I was like, oh, no shit. When I had been fielding the intelligence capability to the Marine Corps and to special operations, it changed how they fought the war. That's disruptive change, right?
Yeah.
And actually, I think it has, now look at what's going on in D.C. right now with Doge and everything. It's very interesting, and people are freaking out. And this is what I realized about disruptive change. I came up with a plan, and I pitched it to Dale and to several of the other CEOs, and I was just bouncing ideas off of them. And they said, no, this is a great plan, but can you do it more incrementally? And I just recoiled against that so much. And for some reason, I didn't realize why until it occurred to me, if you want to disrupt something, you have to disrupt yourself too.
Yeah.
It doesn't just disrupt all of your competitors. It disrupts everything. And you have to do it disruptively.
Yeah, which is not incrementally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what's going on right now. And if, I'm sure, like, people in business or whatever who are familiar with that term in business and have seen that before in business, and they look at Doge and see what's going on. That's what's going on. Now, I understand where it's terrifying to people who don't. I'm not saying it's good, bad, right, wrong, whatever, but that's what's happening.
Yeah.
It's disruption.
Yeah.
And usually the outcome of that is a transcendence into something else.
Yeah, it's the growing pains in the interim that are, like you said, uncomfortable. And I think you're seeing that with a lot of the funding of projects that has either been paused or if you want to say temporarily canceled, that are freaking a lot of people out that maybe were dependent on government funding for, research or for, whatever. I think a lot of folks in that position are angry and scared, and I can certainly empathize with that.
Oh, yeah.
I just, I hope that it does turn into that it turns into a transcendence into something far, far greater than what exists now, and that, people will look back almost kind of like and laugh that they were worried about it because now they're in a better spot. I hope that that's what happens, But,
well, either way, something's going to change because of it. And yet, you're right. It could just be total disaster fuck. But you have some pretty smart guys working on it.
Yeah.
Who knows? Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I mean, I can see how, like I said, I can see how it's really uncomfortable for people that maybe don't recognize what it is or have never seen that before.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So The Perfect Fucking Life and Finally Somehow Home. Your writings and if you want to call them jotting things down, doodling, whatever, mental doodles, ultimately turn into 2 books. Can you kind of synopsize those?
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, over the course of my time in New York, especially in Uganda, especially I was writing a lot, and then when I was in New York, I did a lot of writing and thinking, and I was beating myself up because, like, it's been a year or so since I've decided to become a writer, and I still haven't produced anything. What the hell? And it occurred to me, like, oh, I actually produced a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
If I just compiled it all together, I already have a book.
Yeah.
So that's where The Perfect Fucking Life came from. And it's a lot of different thoughts on war, on important shit in life, whether you believe whatever you believe. It's important to know, what you believe. Just going through life and not really minimizing that, I think, is a big mistake. And I think it's important to challenge yourself, because if you don't, you are kind of just going along with the flow. And there's a lot of little ideas and statements and some short stories and stuff in here that really kind of helped me understand a lot more about myself, and this really kind of helped me pull through that really difficult time in my life. And this book was published 2022, and this one was just recently published. This is Finally Somehow Home. So this is all the stories that we've been talking about here. Basically, just as a memoir. With a lot of the things in here, it provides context to The Perfect Fucking Life. So, if you want the full down and dirty, Finally Somehow Home that's where
The soup to nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here, man, I want to give these to you, brother.
Thank you
so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
very much. That's awesome. Yeah.
And I'll write something in those for you.
Yeah. In the
for
same
you.
vein, I've got some parting gifts for you.
Oh, thank you, man.
Kind of the standard
Oh, hell
challenge
yeah.
coin, as well as maybe with where you live, the black box. Big thanks to John Johnston and Champion Choice Silver for coming up with the idea and making them and donating a lot of
Oh,
stuff. So,
wow. That is sick, dude.
yeah.
That is badass.
The cursory mic drop shit kicker belt buckle. So,
Hell yeah. That's perfect, especially for where I live.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a lot of people with big belt buckles
yeah.
wandering around that
Amen.
part of the world.
Hopefully it's not overcompensating, right? No, it's awesome, man. I can't thank you enough for coming. It's a fascinating story. So many layers to it, too, that I have no doubt the lessons learned and transcribed into these 2 books are thought-provoking and powerful, and I appreciate the copies and for you coming to spend time on the show.
Oh, man, it's been a great privilege, and thank you again for having me.
No, absolutely. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.